All right, hello, bienvenue, and welcome. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. As always, I am Cole, joined by Jay, and tonight we continue our kind of side trip into the more quirky, I guess you could say whimsical world for a while after doing so many darker type movies, I guess. And I guess it was only a matter of time before we wound up doing a film by Wes Anderson, whom we are both fans of for the most part. We both enjoy his movies, and then we just had to narrow down what would be a good one to start with. And we have decided upon 2012's, here's the Blu-ray, Moonrise Kingdom, which is a little bit different for even for Wes Anderson, in that the main characters in this movie are actually children, although there's plenty of adult supporting roles. In fact, this movie has what you would call an all-star cast. By the time this had come out in 2012, I was an established, by this time I was an established fan of Wes Anderson, so I was really anticipating this movie. When I found out that Ed Norton was going to be in it, I was so happy, because he's one of my favorite actors anyway. And he just blends seamlessly into the Wes Anderson world. I love it so much. I still remember seeing the previews for it, which has his line where he discovers that Sam has gone missing. He's like, Jiminy Crickets, he flew the coop, or something like that. Let's you right up. And I'm just like, oh, that's perfect. I'm sure you probably saw sometime around that time he hosted Saturday Night Live, and he did a sketch where it was what was it? It was a horror movie but done by Wes Anderson.
Oh wow! I don't think I saw that.
Oh, you'll have to see that because it's really good. Because it's it's basically Wes Anderson doing a horror movie, a home invasion type movie, kind of like the Strangers or something like that. And it has Edward Norton playing Owen Wilson. He does a really great Owen Wilson impersonation and stuff like that. And they show their house and stuff like that. And it's we have to defend ourselves. It's let's make a list. And it's a list of all these things they can use in their house as weapons and stuff like that. And they get this weird note under the door. It's from the home invaders. It's can we come and kill you? It's dear home invaders, no, you most certainly cannot, or stuff like that. It's jeepers kids, into the panic room, or I don't know. It's really funny. It's quite well done. It perfectly captures Wes Anderson for sure. And shows that Ed Norton can actually do a pretty good impression. I mean, sometimes these actors, you never really get to see them do the other stuff, so it was kind of cool. Yeah. He does a very good Owen Wilson. He's got a slightly askew, a scant blonde wig on, doing.
Oh, he was doing Owen Wilson.
Okay. Yeah, he was doing Owen Wilson because it's starring Owen Wilson.
That's cool.
Yeah, you'll have to check that out. It's really hard to find SNL clips where I am because most of them, they just black it out in my country, but you should be able to.
Well, I mean, usually NBC. The website, you can watch them on there, but yeah, they're pretty hard to find.
Yeah. Anyway, it's really funny.
Yeah, speaking of Owen Wilson, this is the only thing Wes Anderson did up to that point without Owen Wilson's involvement. So, and I was thinking, you remember when he had that breakdown, after, I think it was right after the Darjeeling Limited? Was that still in that period of time? I couldn't track.
I thought it was just maybe 1 or 2 years later. I thought it was around 2014 or something. Maybe.
Okay, so maybe that I didn't know if maybe that was one of the reasons why he wasn't involved or what. But
yeah, didn't he attempt suicide and everything?
I think so. Yeah.
Made me feel really bad because he seems like a nice guy.
Owen Wilson. Yeah, I like a lot of his stuff that he's done. Most of it's Wes Anderson stuff that I like.
Yeah, I mean, I liked seeing him and his brother Luke both in Royal Tenenbaums. That's kind of cool.
And Bottle Rocket, too.
Yep. So Wes Anderson has his own sort of stable of actors, but then he's added to them over the years. And, for this, so this would be the debut of Ed Norton in that. And I think this is the first time he used Jason Schwartzman. Or no, it's not. He used Jason Schwartzman also in Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I completely forgot about until you told me before the show. Because I'm like, that's right, that's 2009. So I think that's when Jason Schwartzman came in.
So he did Rushmore, and then all of a sudden he becomes part of the Wes Anderson world.
Oh, yeah, he's way back then, isn't he? And then, he wasn't... Okay, so he had him, and then he, didn't use him for years and years, and then brought him back. He must have been super young for Rushmore.
Yeah, he was. I think he was maybe, I don't know. He was playing like a high school kid, so I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Older than that.
See, I'd even forgotten that was him. So, yeah, so this also has Bill Murray, who'd been in a few... It's not a particularly special role by Bill Murray. It's fine. Kind of just his role in Royal Tenenbaums, where he's there and he's okay, But people who have watched this show or maybe watched the Sausage Factory know that Bill Murray's one of my favorite actors, and my very favorite thing that Bill Murray's ever done is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I know most people, when they cite great Bill Murray performances, they'll probably pick something from the classic era of the '80s, or if they want to say something more recent, they might go highbrow and say Lost in Translation. But for me, it's Life Aquatic. I love it so much.
I've actually come around on Lost in Translation. I actually like that film quite a bit now. It was one of those that for years and years I hated, but it just kind of clicked with me,
Yeah, I mean, I can understand because I feel the same sort of resistance to certain movies when they have like that big reaction and reputation among people where everyone's like, oh, it's so good. It's like, I have a hard time watching it because like I have such a weird sort of like one-sided relationship with Japan and stuff and how much I want to visit there and stuff. So it really romanticizes something I already romanticize. So it makes me feel very wistful and stuff. So even though I own that on DVD, I haven't watched it in years. I should give it another watch and stuff. And this was back before Scarlett Johansson was really a big star, and she could just play a role. She's gotten to a point now where like it's not like Scarlett Johansson can't act anymore. It's just like I don't know. She's become like a lot of these A-listers become, where they're kind of more of a brand, where they don't really want you to play a character. They just want you to play yourself because that's what people like. So one of the things that's nice about that is just before that, so you actually get to hear her sort of act.
You're right.
Like, I'm Scarlett Johansson in another movie, looking glamorous.
That may be like the first movie I've seen her in post, child actress.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true because that's 2004. She was, I mean, straddling the line as like a teenage actress in Ghost World, which is 2001 or 2000 or 2001. Not that that's really a big role for her, but she's there.
She was in like Eight-Legged Freaks and stuff like that as a younger person. So
yeah.
What year was Lost in Translation? 04, you said?
That is also 04. No, maybe it's 03.
Okay.
I think it's 2003. Yeah, I think Bill Murray. So Bill Murray basically back to back did Lost in Translation, then Life Aquatic. So not too bad for him. And both those movies kind of really revived him because the '90s had not really been that successful, which is partially his own fault. Everybody who's familiar with Bill Murray knows like how difficult he is in a lot of ways to work with and stuff like that. So. And he kind of half-assed it in a lot of ways in the '90s. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll be in Space Jam, and this isn't the '90s, but I think it's like 2001 that like disgusting, partially animated movie. With something Jones, Osmosis Jones.
Yeah.
Actually, who's the girl in Osmosis Jones? Is that Scarlett Johansson? No, probably not. That'd be too much of a coincidence. But
very possible.
He has like some daughter in that. I'm gonna have to just check that right now, just for my own.
I was just going to throw out Rosario Dawson, but probably not playing his daughter.
Yeah, because that's like Chris Rock is like one of the animated characters. But it all takes place inside Bill Murray's body, and Bill Murray's just like some disgusting person. But who's his daughter? Oh, Kid Rock does a voice in that. That really lets you know the time frame of this movie.
That's how you know it's good stuff.
And his buddy Uncle Cracker is also a voice. Remember that guy? Yeah. He was like his fat DJ that kind of liked classic rock. So Kid Rock's like, hey, here, you can have a career because I said so. And here, you just do a bunch of half-ass, like him doing like, give me the beat boys, to free my soul. I can't see I see the cast list, but I can't even see where it shows the daughter. So I guess
this is like Alina Franklin, someone I'm not familiar with.
Okay, yeah. I figured it couldn't have been her. But anyway, I've never seen that movie in its entirety. It's too disgusting. But I've seen, parts of it.
Kid Rock plays a character named Kidney Rock.
Oh my god! They're like, this is gold. We're capitalizing at just the right moment. Everybody's going out to see Osmosis Jones and listening to Ba With a Ba.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, they absolutely were. But yeah, it's so odd. Like you've got such an all-star cast, but like even Edward Norton's role is not that big. Like what is his screen time? Like maybe 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'd say more than that. He's in quite a few scenes.
Yeah. I mean,
But
the kids are
was this
definitely
the entry?
stars.
This was definitely the entry point for Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis had never been in one of those movies. And I'm sure there's certain fans of Bruce Willis that didn't want to see him in a movie like this, but I liked it,
I was
because
going to say,
Bruce Willis had spent a lot of the 2000s just doing like those really serious whispery roles that I hate so much that make me want to scream at the screen. I'm just glad to see him acting like a normal person again, because I don't know, I feel like he just went on this run, like not counting like the other Die Hard movie they stuck in there, of him just like, it started with Sixth Sense. It's just like, okay, he'll just be really serious and he'll be really whispery and he'll take huge pauses before he talks, and oh my god, like he did at least 4 or 5 movies like that drive me insane, where he's just like this really serious, intense person that barely ever talks. So it's just nice to see him play just kind of a normal character in
I
this.
think
He's the cop.
that's kind of the joke. He's like playing a good cop here, as opposed to, or a friendly cop, as opposed to his normal cop character.
Yeah, he's actually a very reasonable authority figure.
Yeah.
So this movie takes place in 1965 in September on a fictional island, but it's like a small island off the coast of Massachusetts. What the hell's it called? I just had it in front of me. New Penzance Island. Anyway, and a lot of work went into creating this island. They did a lot of location scouting throughout the U.S. and parts of Canada and stuff like that. So they wound up, I think, shooting most of it in parts of Rhode Island, which I guess is good. That's an island. And yeah, it's just another one of those really great self-contained, built from the ground up worlds that that Anderson's so great at creating, where everything looks like there's just so much time and care put into it. There's so much craftsmanship, and it's a really good movie for evoking nostalgia, even if you're not of that age. So the characters in this movie, like the main characters, are 12, so that make them roughly 30 years older than me. I would have been 12 around 95, as opposed to 65. Obviously not born in 65, but there's still moments and things in this movie that I can still remember from my own childhood. At least, not exactly, but very similar. Like, I can very similarly remember being a young kid at home in a room by myself and playing records on my small Fisher-Price record player. Like, that is something I did. Actually, the whole opening scene of the movie where they show you the kids and the people in their house going out, it kind of makes you a little wistful. And again, neither of us are quite old enough for this, because both of us grew up, there was TV and video games for us too. But still, not nearly to the degree it is now. And of course, internet, streaming, phones, et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of makes you wistful and remember what it was like to just entertain yourself as a kid without actually using a goddamn screen. Because, the kids are playing ping pong down in the basement. They're listening to the record. They're reading books. They're actually doing... they're entertaining themselves, and they're not doing it with like TV or video games or anything, or internet or anything like that. And it's kind of nice to see. So yeah, it reminds me of some things like that. It reminds all the books that she stole. No, they all have really nice, great covers and stuff like that they show that are featured in this movie. None of them are real. They were all created for the purposes of this movie.
Well, she may return them, so we don't know if she's stolen them or not.
Yeah, okay. So the library books, they even have the laminated covers and such. But anyway, they all remind me of my childhood, because those are the books I grew up on reading. So it evokes to me sitting in a room, not even, I had a fairly big house too, so not necessarily a bedroom, but in a room, and maybe it's raining outside, and I'm thumbing through one of those types of books, because I was a big reader. And those books are very much... She likes kind of a lot of the same sort of books I like too. Fantasy books about kids that go on adventures and find out they're special and stuff, which is still a very popular thing today. That's what Harry Potter essentially is,
right?
For instance. Bit of a digression here. So I don't even know why I bothered, but it popped up on Netflix. So I tried to watch a bit of, what is it? A Wrinkle in Time. And I just had to turn it off in disgust. It was so stupid.
Is it?
Now,
okay.
This is not coming from the usual place for me, which is they're not doing a good job with the book. I can't even... My confession here is that if somebody that grew up reading all that, A Wrinkle in Time never made an impact on me. I read it. It didn't mean anything to me, and I moved on. unlike so many of those other books, like say Narnia or Lord of the Rings or various other like not necessarily children but fantasy stuff like that, that meant so much to me and continue to be really cool to me. Not cool, but I still think are really cool as an adult and stuff like that. Wrinkle in Time, I just read it once when I was maybe 12, 13, and I put it back. Like I didn't care. So it's not like I disliked the movie because I thought they were doing the book a disservice. Because honestly, it's been so long since I read it, I really don't recall. But I don't know. It feels like the movie was just going out of its way to make some sort of like social statement. I don't know. Like, why is the person that directed Selma the director of this children's fantasy movie? I don't know.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I'm not saying like, oh, you direct Selma, that means you can't direct anything else. It just seems really weird. And you have Oprah like playing this character that just totally feeds her ego, where she's like, yes, I'm a goddess. I'm a bright, shining goddess, and everybody loves me. I don't know. But I watched maybe 35 minutes and I was too annoyed and it turned off. It looks really good visually and stuff, but I don't know. I can't, speak from the standpoint of somebody that was a fan of the book growing up. Again, I read it growing up, but I didn't care. So maybe it is a good adaptation. I don't know, but I don't even know why I tried to put it on because I was like, I was like, this isn't for me. Like, I didn't really like the book. I don't even remember the book, and I was just like, it's probably just going to bother me. And it really did. It really did bother me.
It was such a lackluster trailer. I remember like wanting to, get into it, but I was like, man, it doesn't look good at all.
No.
I'm glad you said that because I was actually going to try to watch it at some point. Because it's on something, maybe on Netflix or something.
Yeah, it's on my Netflix. And that's why I thought, okay, I'll give this a look.
I mean, generally when Disney movies come out, you hear a little bit of buzz, a little bit of conversation from people, but zero on this one. Like I heard no one say good or bad, so and I knew that probably wasn't a good sign. So,
and I now realize that while I wasn't a fan of the book, a lot of people were, and a lot of people my age and maybe a little older did absolutely grow up the book and really liked it. It just didn't make an impact on me. I don't know. I was not that interested, and never saw the point of revisiting it. And I was like, I guess maybe that's why I wanted to check out the movie, because it might have been my sort of half-assed way of revisiting the book, but I just didn't enjoy it at all. And I gave up on it kind of quickly because I was really trying to pay attention, but I was like, already starting to like just look over at the Twitter feed or something else, to other stuff instead of paying full attention to it. I don't know.
It seems like a lot of CGI going on.
Yeah, and not bad. I mean, it's top quality CGI, and I don't know, but to that point, I don't particularly like the artistic aesthetic to it. Anyway, like it doesn't really have a look that I like or anything. I don't know. Just not one that appeals to me personally. But yeah, so getting back to this movie, yeah, all the books that it shows with their various covers and stuff, none of them are real, but they all have that really good look where they absolutely feel like they're real and from that era and stuff. Each one was done by a different artist, including actually Wes Anderson's brother did one. And when she's reading out loud from a couple of them, that's all stuff that was written by Wes Anderson himself. So that's kind of cool. But yeah. One of the things it reminds me of, even though this is actually not a fantasy book that I read growing up, which is kind of from that era, I think it was from 60s or 70s, was from, I can't remember the full title, but it starts From the Mixed Up Files of, and it's like Mrs. something something. Anyway, it's about a girl who, she's from a fairly large family with multiple siblings, but she picks one of her other younger brothers to run away with, and they basically run away. She has this big plan to run away and live at this museum. But then it turns into this whole other thing when they meet like some weird woman there. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But the books in that remind me of that. And even this movie itself reminds me of that because it's also about a boy and a girl running away together, although it's quite different. So in this, you have two basically social outcast characters, two misunderstood children, which is a big, a big theme of the movie. It's sort of about how, at least I think, about, it's not like some people say it's about mental health. I think it's more about people's perceptions of mental health. Because honestly, I think what it's saying, what I get from it, is neither of the characters actually has anything wrong with them.
Sure.
I think what it is, and it was back then, but it's even more so now, 2018, of course, it's exacerbated, is our tendency as a society and parents and adults and stuff to like label and diagnose children just when they act a little different,
Mm-hmm.
and just immediately think, oh, this is a disorder, this is an emotional problem. You know, kids are weird. Kids do weird stuff and act out weird ways. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. They're still could be completely emotionally healthy. And yet it seems, yeah, there's a certain, especially nowadays, I think it would have been a little more rare back then, but I'm sure it existed then too, where, yeah, you just like label a kid like a troubled child, they have this or that, and they're all ready to, yeah, diagnose them and say that there's something, you know, emotionally and psychologically wrong with them.
Well, I think back then you said they're a troubled child and just kind of wrote them off for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm. And that's very much what Sam is facing, right? Because
Right.
Sam is an orphan, and because of his troubled status, he's bounced from home to home. And what this starts with is, once, like, his running away the first time is the final straw for the last foster family, who are very formal and polite about it, just saying, no, we don't think, like, they're not flipping out. They're like, ah, that stupid kid. They're just like, I don't think it'll be possible at this point for us to welcome him back. It's not working out. We know you meant well. He's not a bad kid, but
That's
what
heartbreaking, man. Oh, it's so
I know,
terrible.
what a weird, sober way to, like, yeah, to do something so cruel.
You're like
It's
drafting a former letter to tell this kid that you don't want him to, that you
Mhm.
don't want your adopted son to come back.
Right. Again, it fits the tone with the movie. Like, I was at a loss trying to come up how to describe this, but every person in the movie, if they have a job or a position or even an informal one, they take it fucking
Yeah.
seriously. Everybody in this movie is completely official and professional, and that's what it's all about. Like, so Susie's two parents are both lawyers who are so professional that, like, they can't even seem to step out of it in their personal lives. They refer to each other as counselor, and just the way they talk is lawyer talk. They'll be
Yeah.
like, I object, and stuff like that, or permission to strike, and that's one of the things that's led to Susie's problem. They're in this family. The mother is overly controlling. She orders the kids around with a fucking megaphone,
Mm-hmm.
while the father is distant. So it's kind of ordinary and she's the only girl in a family of boys. So and she's older than the rest, and it seems like perfectly natural to us that, yeah, she'd probably want to act out and feel misunderstood. And she's so misunderstood to the point that they're just like, yes, troubled child. What is wrong? She's emotionally disturbed. What are we to do with this terrible child? Like, give me a break. This enfant terrible, if you will. I mean,
Well, and
ridiculous.
she finds the pamphlet.
Yeah, coping with a troubled child or whatever.
And Sam actually laughs at her
Yeah,
when he, when he shows it to her, when she shows it to him.
yeah, yeah. And she's like, it's not funny, and then she leaves. But you understand where Sam's coming from.
Sure.
Just like when they talk about him being an orphan, she says, well, all the stories, the best kids, all the most interesting kid stories, the kids are orphans. And she kind of wants to be one herself. And you understand from her perspective because she's got this fractured family.
Right.
But for Sam's perspective, he says, I love you, but you know what you're talking about. Because he's
Right.
like, here, the harsh reality of being an orphan is not this, whimsical fantasy you're used to. It sucks. I'm bouncing from place to place. Nobody likes me. Nobody cares about me. Yeah. It's a nice little moment of emotional honesty there between our leads. And that's another thing that a lot of time was spent for this movie, because, I mean, the movie hinges on these two leads. They spent about eight months casting the kids, and they did a great job. They're both really good, and they both have pretty good chemistry and stuff together, too. The girl has really sort of striking, intense eyes, I thought. Now, I know she's also wearing some makeup, which will bring that out to a certain extent. But there's just some shots of her, like, just sort of looking. In fact, I've noticed, like, this movie, of course, having the I keep derailing myself as more things occur to me. But I was going to say, so there's two parts, one at the beginning, one at the end, where she actually breaks the fourth wall a little bit and looks directly into the camera.
Yeah.
But wall breaking is not different for a Wes Anderson film. And, of course, this film has a narrator. But it's much different than, say, the Royal Tenenbaums, where Alec Baldwin is the narrator, because Alec Baldwin is the omniscient, unseen narrator. Our narrator is actually one of the characters who's in the story. So it's kind of funny because he is omniscient. Because at one point early, when he's talking about the island, he's talking about the storm that is to come. He already knows it's going to happen. Like, so he's omniscient that way. Because the whole point is nobody knew how bad the storm was going to be, but he already knows. But then later, it's kind of funny too when they're arguing about what to do to go after the kids and stuff. He interjects, and there he is. He's the librarian, by the way. I can't remember that actor's name, but he's one of those people that just I really like to listen to. Like, he should always, like, host documentaries or read books on tape. Like, he commands my attention.
Bob Balaban.
Yeah, that's his name. Really short guy. He's only like 5'4" or something like that. Really small guy, but he's just something about him I find very arresting. I'm like he always has my undivided attention. So he's very good as a narrator in that context.
Yeah, I know him primarily from Alias.
Yeah, was that the show with Jennifer Garner?
Mm.
Yeah, I know the show or know what it is, but no, I never saw him. That's cool, but I mean, he's been at least one other Wes Anderson, I think, but I can't think now.
He was in Isle of Dogs.
I have not seen yet. So maybe this was the movie where he first showed. Yeah, so this movie actually was like the first appearance for several key actors in the Wes Anderson universe or whatever. Frances McDormand, of course, is the Susie's mother, Bill Murray's wife. Here's something that I never caught until this time that I watched the movie. It wasn't even until I read something about it. You know how, like, early in The Search, Bill Murray has, like, a black eye, and they talk about him falling down in the dark?
Right.
But then later in the movie, he has another black eye. I guess it's supposed to be implied that she literally does hit him.
Yeah.
I never caught that the first few times I watched the movie.
You know what?
And it's just one of those things that Wes Anderson throws in for no reason. He always likes to throw in things for no reason, and that's definitely one of them. Just like the fact that she's carrying on some sort of affair with Sharp, the cop. Like, it doesn't really have much to do with anything. I mean, I guess you could say, yes, it contributes to the fracturing of the family, I guess. And then she does sort of decide to end it, but then she doesn't really end it in any definitive way. More or less, she just says, well, for now. And he's like, until further notice. And she's like, yes. So that's not really in any definitive ending. I mean, they live on their really tiny island where everybody knows each other. And like she said, you don't know. We could see each other tomorrow. Yeah, you probably will.
Yeah.
On this tiny island where everybody knows each other.
Mm-hmm.
But Wes Anderson, I don't know, he likes to throw in things just for the hell of it. Just like, was there any point to killing the dog? I know I've already talked about this before, but did it help at all? Did it help the plot? Did it add anything? Because I don't think it did. I think it was gratuitous and weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was at the time meant to show, someone got injured, pretty severely, and it wasn't a human.
But a human did get stabbed.
Right, and someone got shot in the eye too. So
no, he didn't get
shot in the kidneys or something. Yeah.
Yeah, the main bad guy, Redford or whatever his name is, the only one that doesn't change. Because as soon as he's out of commission, the rest of the scouts, do a heel turn. Mm-hmm. They're just like, we've been jerks, we're going to change. So it really much proves that, like, he kind of commanded them. And once he was out of the picture, they, reverted back to being nice, normal kids.
So the kid with the lazy eye just had the lazy eye the entire time?
Like the entire time. To the point that that's what he was called. He was called Lazy Eye.
Right.
Even by Ed Norton. So I really like the very first shot, too, the establishing thing of the scouts is Ed Norton getting up and, doing his inspection on breakfast time. Because it's like this montage of stuff that, like, nowadays, like, I don't think parents would allow their kids to be doing anymore.
Sure.
Like every like one of the duties the scouts are doing has like some element of danger to it. Like he does at least tell them, like, what the hell are you doing with this treehouse? Like, that's really way too high and stuff. But at one point he's got, like, one of them is like working with explosives, and he's just like, yeah, carry on.
They're building fireworks or something.
Yeah, they're like making their own fireworks. So they obviously have access to gunpowder. He's just like, how are those fireworks coming on? But there's definitely a few other things that are like, quite dangerous, and it just shows how, like, the world has changed. Just like for something really innocent, for instance, like him smoking around them. Like nowadays, a scout leader cannot smoke around the scouts. That would be he get in a lot of trouble for that. But this is 1965. No one's going to care about that back then.
Well, I like that when he goes to the kids building the fireworks, he holds his cigarette out, like, away from the fireworks.
But he won't get rid of it.
Right.
He's a very committed smoker.
Which I think is why it got a PG-13 rating, was because of the smoking, which that's kind of ridiculous. But
I know, because, like, the swearing is very light. Somebody says damn or hell, maybe goddamn, but it's not a movie full of swearing or anything like that. So yeah, it might be the smoking and a more implied violence. But yeah, I guess the only thing I can take away from the dog getting killed is they wanted to show just how intense the fight was, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, everybody's flipping out later, talking about how she is emotionally disturbed because she stabbed the guy, right?
Right.
But the as they say, oh, are you a lawyer? Because we're lawyers. Like they don't even know the situation, but they are because they say she was attacked. They actually do have a point, although they don't know it. Which is, I think her stabbing the guy with scissors is actually somewhat defensible, given the weapons that those guys came at them with.
One had like a hatchet. One had like
One had a club
bat,
full of spikes.
yeah, with nails in it. And
Yeah. One had like,
arrows.
like a really big like machete and stuff. Because again, it's all under the influence of I think his name is Redford. I can't remember. It's not like that because he just says like because he says like after the scoutmaster says they're going to go to a search for him. He's like, "Oh, I'm not going to be the only one out there without a weapon," as if like that's really needed.
Yeah,
Man, I keep breaking these.
It's still like a quirky atmosphere, but it's really serious. Like they have deadly weapons.
Yeah, and I mean that's the kind of thing that like Wes Anderson likes to evoke. So I get it, but I guess he felt like he needed a real life consequence to that, so he kills the dog. But that's where I disagree. I'm just like, come on, man. You got this whimsical, quirky movie, and now you're just murdering an animal, and no one even really fucking cares. Like again, like that whole part's it's like, was he a good dog? Who's to say? Like he does care, and he says he didn't deserve to die. And later he even brings it up to Redford. He says, you killed the dog, and Redford's just like, couldn't be helped.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it really doesn't matter at all. It would play exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. At least nothing happens to her cat.
Yeah.
Which looks a lot like the cat my family recently got. We got a tabby. So he looked a lot like that when he was a kitten.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, there's Theo. But,
maybe we can give him the head and guts. No, he only eats cat food. You look over and she's got like 20 cans of cat food.
Yeah. The movie, it does remind... And of course, I was a scout.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you.
Ryan and I were actually both scouts together. And the other thing this reminded me of was May Camp. So every May, in the long weekend, which would be here in Canada, the Victoria Day weekend, we had the big camp, which would involve all the different troops coming together for like a jamboree, which is similar to what they have, right? So it reminded me very much of May Camp, including... Now, I didn't know this until I watched the movie. Did you know that was Harvey Keitel?
Yeah.
I had no idea. I found that out literally like an hour ago.
I was like, you've got a quality filmmaker when Harvey Keitel is playing like such a low role in the in the cast.
I've never seen Harvey Keitel play like a more like low, not low, but like a less, like he's not abrasive at all. You know what I mean? Like Harvey Keitel usually plays like abrasive, like in your face sorts of characters. Right. But anyway, so I even had a real life counterpart to him. So this is funny. Ryan would tell the same story. So for like, the several years that we went to this camp, we were always definitely sort of the badass scouts. In that, like, we were the opposite of the troop you just saw. In that, like, we were never in uniform. The only time we were ever in uniform was when they had like the big horseshoe events. We do the horseshoe wherever. Then we put on the uniform. But at our own campsites within our own thing, no. We went around, with slingshots, shooting stuff at squirrels, and just generally fucking around. Meanwhile, and sometimes when we had that free time, we would watch the other, they'd actually be in their neckerchiefs and they'd be like doing official scout stuff, like making lean-tos and stuff. We didn't do any of that. We just went around and made fun of all of them.
Yeah.
But so it reminds me of, but anyway, there was like sort of a main guy. I don't know why, because like these were just a whole bunch of different troops from various parts of Cape Breton. But there was a troop, I think, from Glace Bay. And for whatever reason, like their leader was kind of like the main guy at this thing, kind of like who Harvey Keitel was. And he insisted on being called Scouter Fred, which is hilarious. Because it's not like that's the way we talk within our own troop. We didn't call our leader Scouter or anything. Like, our leader was Gary. We called him Gary. But he was called Scouter Fred. Now, just picture basically like Ned Flanders as a scoutmaster. And that's who this Scouter Fred was. Like, he was like straight out of fucking Hee-Haw or something. He was the lamest guy ever. And he was just so dedicated and so enthusiastic about everything Scout, which I guess is good, and that's why he got the job. Probably nobody else even wanted the job, but man, he was lame. The only thing he did that I thought was kind of cool was like one of the things like they could do is they would offer like different sort of like courses and stuff where you could like brush up on a skill. He could teach people how to make stuff out of like duct tape, and his specialty was duct tape wallets, which is pretty cool. So we were like, yeah, duct tape wallet. But I mean, he was like Scouter Fred. He was so fucking lame. He was a lot like this guy, except way actually lamer. Like, this guy at least still seemed like a normal person who could break characters. Like, He's like, "Where's your goddamn troop?" Like Scouter Fred would never have talked like that. Like this is a guy that like never got mad, just smiled all the time. I'm telling you, he was like the Ned Flanders of Scouts. So this reminded me a lot of May Camp that Ryan and I would do in May. Except they reminded me more of like the more competent troops that were all doing stuff because you have to say they were all really competent scouts. They all knew their shit. Sam stands out, but they were all really good too. They all had their skills. We didn't.
I didn't learn much of anything. Maybe like how to start a fire with a flint. That's maybe it.
I learned things, but I didn't really retain the skills. Like this is after Scouts actually, so I won't cut that. But I just mean like the thing I hated a bit worse was like the knots. Like I did just enough to get my knot badge, and then I immediately lost like the ability to ever make knots again. But I mean, I was competent in that, like, some of that pathfinding stuff, I could do it okay and stuff, but not to the level that these kids are on. But
I knew kids that went all the way to the Eagle Scout, which is like at the top. The head scout.
I was one technically.
Really? Wow.
In Canada, we have a much worse name for it in Canada. Technically, I was a Chief Scout.
Okay.
/ the original term was Queen Scout, if you want to believe that.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a terrible name.
Yeah, so no, Ryan and I both went all the way and became Chief Scouts, which is the equivalent of Eagle Scouts. Which it took a lot of extracurricular stuff, and we actually had to come up to here to Halifax to do the ceremony and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
It was kind of a big deal. I used to put it on my resume back when that fucking stuff
right.
So, but a lot of that stuff, like I said, I learned it, but I didn't retain it.
Yeah, I quit like very early on. Like, I mean, I was like 3 years in, but it was still extremely early on.
Yeah, no, I went all the way up from Cubs to Scouts to most people with that. We were even Venturers, but Venturers was so loose and different. Like we almost had nothing to do with anything when we were Venturers. Yeah. When we were Scouts, we went to Bay Camp and we still had that sort of stuff going on. Brian, I'll tell you about Ventures sometimes because again, this is one of those parts of my life that sounds made up. Because I'll very quickly tell you that didn't even know Ventures was an option where we lived. Like we knew there were just very few, kids that would still do this in high school, right? Venture, this brand new venture thing was starting up just that year, the year that we were 15. It's like, oh, do you want to do this? It's like, well, let's go down and see who this guy is, because this guy had no attachment to like the scouting hierarchy or anything like that. So we get down there, and there's a younger guy named Chad who's like, I guess probably in his late 20s at the time, and he's like the assistant guy. But the main guy, and this is where it gets unbelievable, was a man named Dave. Dave was probably in his mid-60s. He was from Australia, and he was basically Alan Quatermain. He was a globe-trotting adventurer who had like spent decades like molding young men and like climbing fucking Kilimanjaro with them and taking them down the goddamn Amazon River. He'd done like everything, like super extreme, and he somehow wound up in Sydney, Nova Scotia with like a bunch of slackers like us. And I mean, we still got to do some, but I mean, he was. Yeah, he really took the whole venturer thing too seriously too, but in a more fun way. Like, I guess the venturer motto is challenge. So every week he'd make us do some weird challenge. Like he put something on the ceiling. We had to figure out how to get up and get it and stuff like that. But man, I have no idea how Dave wound up with us. But he was great. And he had, what was even better was that Dave had this like shiftless 20-something son named Liam, who like had nothing going on in his life. So he just hung around and like made fun of us and stuff. You could tell like he was like the exact opposite of his father. He was just like shiftless, like slacker.
Right.
He was basically overweight. He had like a goatee and stuff. Like, I don't know, but he would sort of half-assedly help out and stuff. He was hilarious. He just spent most of his time like making fun of us and making inappropriate jokes and stuff. And it was really, really interesting time in my life. But anyway, this movie reminds me before that of the actual Scout stuff. So, and the other thing it reminds me of my childhood is church, because a big part of this movie is how a year before, this is how Sam and Suzy met. They met at an event at the church, which was some sort of weird, really elaborate Noah's Ark like play involving many costumes and songs and props and everything like that. I can't say I was ever involved in anything quite that elaborate, but it still does remind me of being involved in various like events at my church or even my, say, elementary school. where we put on things like maybe a Christmas pageant or something like that. Like I have a lot of memories of like, yeah, being in like churches or church basements or big schools that weren't mine, like being down in the basement in the hallways and people were putting on costumes or playing the piano. Like that's like a big part of like my childhood memory is stuff like that. So like that whole thing where he leaves the performance and he's weaving down, he's looking at all the different people in their costumes until he finds her. Like, yeah, that lines up really well with a lot of my memories from a kid, being a kid, is like being involved or part of some of these productions. Although I can't say we ever put on like a Noah's Ark production with many, many costumes and some sort of weird soundtrack. I don't know what's going on. And of course, the Noah's Ark thing runs throughout the throughout the whole thing because it's all about what happens before and after a great flood, which is pretty cool, you know. And to Anderson's credit, he doesn't like just start sprinkling in a bunch of like Genesis allusions. Like he leaves that stuff out and just lets you enjoy for what it is. But I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about where to go from there. I like the scene with Jason Schwartzman, the short little scene he was in.
Yeah, cousin something. Cousin Ben? Something like that.
Ben, yeah. Cousin
See,
Ben.
that's another thing I think a lot of people can relate to is like some like knowing some like growing up and knowing some guy who's technically an adult, but he was still really young. So he was kind of like the bridge between the adults and the kids, where like he would break the rules for the kids and stuff. And this, the whole point, like he's such a jerk. Like he's supposed to be giving this stuff away for free, and he's charging them. He's like trying to charge. He's trying to charge them for like a first aid kit and stuff like that.
Snake bite kit.
Yeah,
like
which is pretty funny. And then like I love how he just immediately adapts to the situation too. It's like here's these two kids, they're running away. Oh, they're gonna get married. He's just like, I offer that. I can get them married. Like not in the legal way, but you know I can do something. If he's gonna take the money. And people should be mindful that $76 in 1965 was a fuck ton of money. It was like almost $600 nowadays.
Was that $76 in nickels?
Yeah, mostly nickels.
Wow.
And I mean, at first he's going to take it. He's like, that's my fee. But he relents and he's just like, they're like, well, we're worried about their future. So he does, you know, he shows kind of like the bastard with the heart of gold. He's like, okay, here, fine.
Could you fit $76 worth of nickels into a tennis ball container?
I don't know. Maybe if they were absolutely packed. I don't know.
I don't know. That's
20 nickels in $1. So 20 times 76.
Possibly.
Yeah, like I said, maybe just absolutely packed to the brim. Well, they also say mostly nickels. You maybe believe like there's some there's some dollar bills in there too, maybe.
Okay.
Possibly. But yeah, when when we did Amelie last week, we talked about how that movie and also most of the movies in Wes Anderson's world are like the magic realism and stuff. Like I wasn't really thinking if that's where the magic realism is. How many nickels fit in the tin? In this, it mostly has to do with lightning.
yeah, surviving a lightning strike.
And not only that, but then retaining some lightning later. Like when they have their supposed last kiss, they share a little like a lightning comes out of his mouth into her. She's like, "You saw some lightning in you," which is very cartoony. But again, it fits the spirit of the movie. This heightened magic realism world.
Well, he gets hit with the lightning. The nickel container explodes. And he gets up immediately. He says, I'm fine. He wipes his glasses off and starts looking out the binoculars.
He's covered in soot, kind of like a cartoon character that got caught holding a bomb or something, right?
I'm fine. Okay, let's go. Like
bombs don't severely burn you or put like hot shrapnel into your body. They just put a layer of soot on you and knock you over. Yeah, it's kind of a similar thing here with the lightning.
Like a Wile E. Coyote situation.
But I mean, yeah, there's a few different themes, but I guess the main one is like the coming of age stuff wrapped in with, again, adults and society's preoccupation in general to sort of try to label kids and diagnose kids and stuff like that. Because we have two kids that are basically dealing with sort of a symptom of kind of like existential anxiety. You know, they don't know who they are or where they fit in the world, and they feel rejected and they don't feel like they fit in, which is super normal. Pretty much anyone you've ever met has gone through that at some point, right?
That's exactly how I felt at that age.
And yeah, to be like 12 years old, as I've said before, maybe on the show, like I was 10 times more, I was like manic compared to those kids when I was 12. Because that's where, what's funny, I talked about this before, so as an adult, I do have an anxiety disorder, and it's one of the things that kind of like messes up my life here and there, coupled with some other things. But I had a completely separate anxiety disorder when I was 12 that was much more intense than this one. and much more based on the existential stuff. Like my anxiety disorder nowadays is very mundane, and it's kind of what you hear a lot of people talk about anxiety, you know, where it's like I couldn't go to the bank today because I blah blah blah. You know, that's kind of more my thing. Like, or I'm at a store and I need to ask somebody a question, but I can't get up the nerve to do it. I don't know why. Like, I just in my mind, I feel like it'll be terrible if I try to ask them a question. And the same thing, you know, like trying to make an appointment, make a phone call. I'll sit there and stare at the phone. I'm like, you need to call and make the appointment, and yet I can't do it. And then I'll be like, I'll do it in 10 minutes, and I'll watch the clock go by. And I'll be like, I'll do it in 20 minutes, and I'll watch the clock. Like that happens to me. But my anxiety disorder when I was 12 was profound and much more existential, like these kids. To the fact that where I was like super upset and worried about things that had nothing to do with my life at all. Like I was terrified of the news and people starving to death in other countries. And of course, I always loved animals. So any war, I would like couldn't sleep because I would think about animals that were lost or, you know, cold and stuff like that. I would worry about how bad it would be if I like was a father, how I would probably fail my children. Again, this is when I'm 12, you know. So I barely slept like when I was 12, 13. I finally got into a good place about halfway through grade 8. And I think I said this before, going to junior high was also a trigger for me because my junior high was a very intimidating, not welcoming place. It was far, you know, it wasn't in the city. I had to go out. It was overcrowded. It was much bigger than my elementary school. It was a bigger school anyway. It was also overcrowded. There were too many kids there. There were over 800 kids. You could only go one way in the hallways or you get run over. It had bars on the windows. The school was called Malcolm Monroe, often shortened to Malcolm. People used to call it Malcatraz because the bars on the windows. Like I said, I've related all this before on our show, I think, but yeah, it used to be really bad in the 80s. But by the time, like, it had like drugs and kind of like low-level gang stuff going on, and like it's crazy. But the guy who was principal when I got there, he was the guy. He arrived in the 80s and cleaned it all up. So it wasn't really nearly as bad when I got there. But still, it was a super intimidating atmosphere. And it scared the hell out of me. Plus, it was French immersion, which was, you know, my own choice, but also very difficult to cope with. So yeah, these kids remind me a lot of myself too. Except, hey, I never got to go on a romantic adventure like that, and I don't think I was ever bad with girls, but I never really got to make connections with girls until I got older. You know, I'm always jealous when I see these movies of like a kid like Sam, like that. Like I'm not talking about having a girlfriend, even, you know, or like that, or just like making a connection. Like I was on good terms with girls. Like girls didn't hate me and shun me. I was on good terms with girls, but I was also they weren't interested in me. You know, I was just sort of there. You know, and yeah, so I was also subject to lots of unrequited crushes and stuff in, say, the earlier years there.
Yeah, I mean, you say around 12, you're still kind of the boys are with the boys and the girls are with the girls to an extent.
Yeah, but once they started mixing more, and it would happen right in front of me, I wasn't part of it.
Yeah.
And that's always been something I've kind of felt bad about. I shouldn't now because it doesn't really matter now, but I do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, hormones and everything else, you know, kicking in just makes everything different. Where, you know,
I mean, in my adult life, I've met people, you know, that lived in different places, so I didn't know them and stuff. And they would say growing up, you know, they had a best friend who was like of the other sex. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I never had anything close to that. But I'm not saying I wanted that, but it would have been neat to have something somewhat relatable. Like I said, I was on good terms with girls. Like I was friendly with them. They liked me okay, but you know, I never really had girl friends or anything. And I certainly didn't have girls that were really interested in me. By the time I got to high school, there were a few girls that were interested in me, but I was so fixated on the unattainable ones that I completely ignored them. You know, there were some shyer, more nerdy girls that, like, you know, they were into me because they saw me as less intimidating than a lot of those. And also, they appreciated my intellectualism and my sensitivity. You know, the stuff that's usually the enemy when you're growing up, right? But at the same time, I was fixated on these other girls that did not care about that. You know, they wanted to date the jerks. So it's all a horrible cycle. It's all a horrible cycle of pain.
Pretty much everybody went through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, if I could go back and give myself advice, I'd just be like, man, don't sweat it. You know, I would always, you know, get nervous about shit. But no, I did have a lot of girls that were really good friends that, you know, obviously I didn't have any feelings about, but that's what made the difference between being comfortable and not comfortable, I think. You know.
Yeah, so I'm always in the back of my head, or maybe never even in the back of my mind, maybe more forefront than I'd like to admit. But yeah, a lot of these movies, I always feel a little bit of pang of jealousy because I'm just like, I didn't have a connection with a girl when I was 12, 13, 14. I knew girls, but yeah, I didn't have any sort of experiences or anything with them. And I'm not talking about sexual experiences or anything like that. I just mean experiences, you know. The experiences that I had and the more exciting ones I had, well, I had them with like boys. Again, you know what I mean.
Right.
But yeah, definitely their existential angst and anxiety is really what's running through here, and that's come from some other movies too. You see it in the really famous French New Wave film, The 400 Blows, which really focuses on like a kid who's about 10 or 11 dealing with all this, just except he's dealing with it entirely by himself. And that's a much more arty movie and stuff, but it's a really good one. But another movie that what's his name? That what Anderson has even said that this movie is almost a spiritual successor to is a movie from 1971 called Melody. But I've never seen that movie, so I kind of want to see it now because I don't know. It sounds interesting. But yeah, he said this movie is kind of like a spiritual successor or a spiritual sequel to it in a kind of way. So that sounds pretty cool.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and transition into the dance, the beach dance scene.
Oh yeah, really cool scene. They're dancing to the cool like French music. You know, she has an aunt that lives in France, so she gets the cool records. You know.
Man, it's really awkward for me. But yeah,
seeing them dance.
No. When she's like, "Oh, it's hard."
Oh, I guess it's awkward if you're a parent, maybe. I don't know. I don't find it too awkward. I mean,
oh, really? Okay.
I mean, I get that it's awkward, but it's not the type of thing that bothers me specifically. I'm just sort of happy for the characters that they're discovering each other, I guess. And they're still, it's not like they're completely losing their innocence.
Well,
Blue Lagoon.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. They're kissing, and that's great. It's all well and good, but then they bring up, the fact that his dick's hard, and
and she does actually let him touch her breast, except she doesn't really have any. So he just sort of goes, I mean,
it's yeah.
I mean, if you want to make it awkward, you can read how some people talk about how, like, even before that, the symbolism of him piercing her ears is, like some sort of sexual conflict.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, but no, seriously, people have said that, which I think is ridiculous. But that's like sort of like his penetration of her, right? Like,
oh God,
give me a break, people.
That was hilarious. I love the cut on that. I made you some jewelry. Oh, are your ears pierced? And then cut to her screaming, him shoving the hooks through her ears.
Yeah.
I love that.
And she's like, all right, do the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But pierced ears is a rite of passage, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't take it as far as some of those people do that want to really put some sort of sexual innuendo on top of it.
No, come on. I mean, we don't know. I mean, they very well could have had sex that night in the tent. It cuts away.
I guess so. I feel like I know the characters well enough to know that they both have enough self-awareness to like not really feel compelled for that or feel ready for that. Despite the fact that they do feel ready to have a life on their own and get married, I still, maybe that's just me being, wishful, and I don't know. I really much doubt that Wes Anderson's intent was to imply that they had some sort of sexual congress going on.
Sure, but okay. Oh, it's hard. Oh, is that a problem? No, I like it.
I know, and you think, well, maybe they're going to
breast now.
Maybe they're going to explore that further.
I'm just saying,
I get it. I know. Maybe he's trying to say in the '60s, kids were a little more innocent than they are now.
Sure.
I don't know. Everybody wants to believe that, but I don't know.
Give them another couple of years, I definitely would not have believed that they didn't have sex.
Oh, yeah, I know. Make them like 14, 15. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It's funny how quickly stuff changes.
I feel like they probably wouldn't even know what to do if they were going to,
Anyway, the scene certainly doesn't make me uncomfortable. I see all sort of the innocence and naivete from it. I get that I guess it has some sort of squeamish lines, but I don't know. I'm not the type of person to really get hung up on that. Again, maybe I'd feel different if children were a bigger part of my own life, but they're not.
Well, I don't even know if that's it. I mean, I was totally on board until that came up. Like, oh, they're kissing. It's sweet. Oh, nope. Oh.
I know. You almost expect it to be some sort of like fake out where they take something like a flashlight out of a pocket or something.
Oh, it's just my flashlight. No, it would have been perfect. Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
But he said, like, by the way, I may wet the bed later on.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know it may not happen, but if it does, I don't want to alarm you.
Yeah. And she's very nice about it.
Yeah, she is.
It's like, I wouldn't want to offend you. She's like, I wouldn't be. Yeah. Everybody in the movie, again, has a very frank and honest way of talking and dealing with each other. Much more direct and honest than I think, again, than probably the real world. This is, again, the sort of magic realism world of a Wes Anderson, where everybody's very clear and concise in the way they talk. And again, it almost is sort of like the whole shtick that came from Peanuts, which is like, oh, we have kids, but they're kind of like talking in such a way that adults would talk, you know, because that was really groundbreaking back then, you know, because you have sort of a similar thing here where the kid, like the kids as like the scouts, they all take, again, it's just like all the adults. Everybody takes their job, their position super seriously. Right. Everybody's very official. Everybody's very by the numbers and everything that they do. You know, and Sam has certainly taken that away. Like when they first make camp and she talks about what she's brought, he's like, we should make an inventory. You know, everybody's very organized. It's really important to them. And I think that's just part of Wes Anderson. Like he's that kind of person. He's kind of, I think, has a bit of OCD about certain things being organized and stuff like that. And I'd like to look into more about how they made the maps, because I like stuff like that a lot. Because again, This is a fictional island, but they made some very nice maps up for it to give you a sense of the geography that the characters are traversing.
Yeah, that's another thing I thought was really interesting, because like he's big into cartography, but like now, you know, I bet anyone under the age of 20 wouldn't know how to read a map whatsoever. It's like, hey Siri, you know, how do I get so and so? You know, that's how you read maps these days.
I really enjoy maps. It's always been my dream as, you know, an aspiring author, especially an aspiring, say, fantasy authors, you know, to write a book that has like a map at the beginning to show like the world or area. You know, I couldn't do it myself. I just have to do a rough job and then give it to an actual proper artist to do.
Right.
But I always really like figuring out geography. I know I've talked about this before. It's kind of the same way I whine about people not paying enough attention to history. On a smaller scale, I feel that same way about geography. I'm always confused and baffled by people that like don't have a sense of geography and don't care at all. Like they'll like I'll name a place and they'll be like, "Where's that?" And I'll say where it is, and they'll be like, and then so I won't leave it. So I'll be like, "Okay, so that's in Alberta," and they're like, I'm like, "Okay, so that's Western Canada. That's up above Montana." They're like, you know, I'm losing them. I'm like, "Don't you want to know where things are in relation to each other?" Like I have that kind of orderly mind. I want to know where things are in relation to each other. Like I don't know why, like a lot of these places I haven't been to, but it makes more sense to me to place them where they actually are on the earth. I realize for most people, it's irrelevant. Like even if they're traveling to this place, it's not up to them. They get on the plane, whether the plane goes east or west doesn't mean anything to them as long as they land where they're landing, you know. But I just can't view the world that way, and I can't understand being content to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you'd be surprised at how many people are just have no idea whatsoever.
I'm not surprised anymore because, like I said, I've spent my life encountering such people, especially in my earlier 20s and stuff, where I would constantly, you know, talk to strangers online. It was a big part of my social life, was, you know, talk to people online, and, you know, the ASL thing would come up, and, you know, I'd often talk to people in other countries that were baffled about where Nova Scotia was, which I understand. I'm not saying everybody should know where Nova Scotia is, because I get that it's a small place and it's obscure, but once I explain where it is, that should help a little bit, and yet they still don't seem to get it. And sometimes I get really frustrated with certain people because I'm like, at least, because as I point out, Nova Scotia is super easy to find on a map. It's geographically distinct. It's out there sticking in the ocean. It's not like, say, you live in Iowa. If you live in Iowa, the only way to find it on a map is using imaginary lines.
Right.
Nova Scotia doesn't rely on imaginary lines. It's there. You can see it plain as day on any map. So I've always been a little bit proud of just having a place that's easy to identify. I'm not expecting people to hear of it. It's not like a big place with a lot of people or anything famous, but it's easy to find and it's geographically distinct. And that's the other thing. Where they shoot this reminds me a bit of my home, Cape Breton Island, in that the topography is very similar to Cape Breton, which is a lot of like streams and very rocky. Cape Breton's a rocky place.
I think if you just started naming some capitals of countries, like you would be astonished at the number of people that have no idea. Like Paris, what country is that in? You know,
Even
London.
Paris? I mean, Jesus.
London. I'm serious, man.
Paris and London? I mean, come on. I mean, I get it if you're saying, like, I don't know, Krakow, you know. Or...
Maybe they'll get Mexico City.
I would hope. We can only hope. I used to be a lot better at my state capitals. I've got I watch Jeopardy a lot, and every once in a while they'll have like categories relating to capitals, and I get them wrong. I'm just like, I used to know them all. What the fuck happened to me?
Yeah, it's kind of
state capitals are annoying though because 90% of them are not the obvious one. You know?
Right. Yeah, no. That's what I was gonna say with world capitals. It's the same way sometimes.
Most states have 2 to 3 major cities that you hear about, and the capital is almost never any of them. It's like some other one. Like, isn't the capital of like New York? What is it? Albany?
I think so.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
Why is Albany the capital? Yeah, just some weird things like that. And every once in a while, the capital's the only place I can name. Like, I don't know any places in Arkansas except Little Rock, which is the capital. That one I'm right about. So it all depends. But yeah, years ago when I was younger, I could name all 50 capitals. But in the last few years, I guess it's slid out of my memory because, yeah, I'll often like screw them up on Jeopardy.
I could definitely name 40. There's some of those Midwest states that always confuse me.
Oh yeah. I'm not even gonna say, "Oh, you're an American. You should know that." No, I totally agree.
It's just something that will not go in my long-term memory. I don't know.
Yeah. So I won't do my there are too many states rant, but there are too many states.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that.
People talk about like California or somewhere divided. Like, you don't need to divide. You need to combine. Simplify. Simplify.
California.
But that's just not the way the world, and not just the U.S., but the world in general works. Like, countries and things divide; they don't combine anymore. You know, when World War I ended, I think 9 new countries formed.
Wow.
I think it was 9. World War I used to be a specialty of mine. It still kind of is, but a lot of it's just memory.
So, yeah, I was thinking this kind of stands out in the world of Wes Anderson because, with the exception of Royal Tenenbaums, some of the earlier stuff in that film, this is really his only period piece. This is set in 1965.
Yeah. Royal Tenenbaums, what, does it have flashbacks?
Yeah, with the kids, when they're kids.
Right, yeah, that's true. But those are so short that, you don't really get a sense. You're right, though, obviously, the flashback.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm just thinking it's more of the film. Maybe I'm remembering it more.
Well, another one that's full of flashbacks is actually, in fact, it has a confusing structure, but works surprisingly well, which is the Grand Budapest Hotel. Because Grand Budapest Hotel is like a story within a story within a story. It's like 3 flashbacks. So I think that one would count also, because I think that flashes back to sometime maybe the mid or late 60s as well.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure. I should check that to see what the year is for that.
I wonder why 65. I wonder if he picked that for some reason. Was he born in 65? He's probably older than that, isn't he?
Oh, wait, I think I had something where he said something related to that.
He's born in 69. Wow, he's younger than I thought he was.
Yeah, he is.
Quite a prolific career for such a young guy.
Yeah, I mean, when he was fairly young, he already had like several movies under his belt. Like fairly young, like for a director, you'd say.
I mean, he'll be 50 next year, but shit.
Yeah, he's definitely another person that has like a lot of interest and respect for history and stuff that he didn't even personally experience. And obviously he's good at hiring people that can help him recreate that kind of stuff. But he's like a lot of people in that, like, he's got that sort of nostalgic drive where he likes to bring up stuff that evoke an older time and stuff. And it really works to the visuals of his movie. We talked about this before, how a lot of directors have this too, where just like older, more old-fashioned things and analog things, they just have sort of a better, more interesting look on film. It's much more interesting to see people play records. It's more interesting to see them do more old-fashioned things with like drive a car with a stick or something like that. And I realized you can still get current cars that have stick, but it used to be a time where like pretty much every car had it.
It's hard to find these days, man, finding a new car. because people don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess nowadays the only way you'd really get it is if you were like really big into sports cars, because like certain sports cars still have that. But yeah, with the average car. That's another thing. Speaking of skills that I acquired and immediately lost, there's one. I learned to drive stick for a brief period, and now I don't think I could handle it. Because it's been forever since I did it. I would probably destroy the car.
It's been quite a while for me too.
I didn't really have to learn it. Like, it's not like I had to. I just was in a position to learn, so I was like, yeah. Okay.
It's a nice thing to
know. People who do it would often speak of it with a lot of pride.
Exactly. I drive a stick.
Yeah, I guess so. Shifting gears is an art, I guess.
Oh, no, yeah. The people I grew up with took that shit seriously.
I'll bet. Yeah, I never really knew people who were that into cars, but I'm aware of them. Those people that, you know, like car skills, that's a big deal. Not just, you know, car knowledge, car skills. I don't know. I think if my life depended upon it, I could change a tire. I could do it, but I would not do it expediently. You know, I would get it done, but it would probably, you know, be a painful process and not fast. Yeah, but I will say at least, yeah, my wilderness skills are definitely better than my automotive skills. You know, some of that stuff I can still sort of do. But yeah, I appreciate the movie for playing up some of the stuff. Like I said, I always thought pathfinding a very interesting skill. And you see that Sam's really trying to do his best to like throw off their trail and stuff, but it's a pretty small island. And the way they head them off, of course, is when the librarian interjects and tells them, you know, Sam showed a lot of appreciation for retracing the steps of this trail. What was it, Chickasaw or something like that?
Right. Which was what, some Indian battle or something happened out there?
Yeah, I think something like that. Like
Native American battle.
Yeah, whoever the indigenous people were originally on the island or something like that. Something that they had done.
It was such a good film. Really gained an appreciation for it, like with this watch.
Same here, and I mean, it's not like we didn't already know this about Wes Anderson because it's in all his films, but the movie, again, it just sort of reinforced sort of like what a craftsman he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the way he like pieces these things together. Like, this is a movie with painstaking detail, you know, the costumes, the props, everything. It's all very detail oriented, which is something a person like me definitely appreciates and is into. And it all comes together really well.
Like you said, they had to work with those kids for a long time to get that chemistry right between them.
Sure.
And that stuff takes time, and studios don't really want to put time into movies anymore. So
right,
it's nice to see stuff like that.
I like how they do a good job of showing how like Suzy and Sam like obviously make the connection because they're both outcasts and stuff. But they do it in such a way that shows that like they're both outcasts for completely different reasons. Mm-hmm. You know, they're both have been labeled troubled, but for different reasons, and it manifests itself differently in their personalities. I like that. It's not just like, oh well, they're really super alike, so no, they're distinctly different from each other.
Well, I think at one point Sam's actually trying to figure that out, why the kids hate him so much. He was asking Roman, why did you hate me? And he said, no, before that, when I first got here.
Yeah, well, why? Yeah, he's the evil one, so he just basically tells him, like, he hated him for no reason, and that's as good a reason as any. And again, it shows the other kids just sort of follow him on that, as far as the scouts go, because as soon as he's removed, they kind of, like, gain a conscience. They're like, we should help this guy, which is nice. But, yeah, he always had a way for rubbing people the wrong way. It shows some flashbacks of him at schools and various homes and the other boys turning on him and attacking him and going after him. And I mean, you get it. He seems a bit of a loner. He's got glasses, which in 1965 was more of a hot button issue than now, believe it or not. Hey, glasses. Hey, 4 eyes. Like, really? Glasses? Okay, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Try harder than that. Come on. But yeah, I really like Scoutmaster Ward finds out that Sam's an orphan, because it wasn't in any of the records apparently that he was an orphan.
And again, this is a world that is very contingent, and it's very important to be official and everything like that, right? Everything runs by like a specific records or schedule, So he's kind of blown away that this information has been left out of the official report, because everybody is very official, which is funny. And of course, the most official is social services, to the point the social services is only identified as social services. She doesn't give a name at any point because she's so efficient and she's so on the job that I am social services. But that's best hammered home probably when she's in like a little plane with the pilot. It's like, oh, we're gonna hit some turbulence here. Hold on, social services. I love that. I was gonna kick it out of that moment.
Yeah, Tilda Swinton's become
they might crash to their death, and he does not know her name. This might be the end for both of us. We might both go down here in flames, but to the end, I will just address you as your title, social services.
She's become a staple of Wes Anderson as well.
Yeah, you can understand why. She's
great in this. Yeah, there's some films I don't.
She's one of those sort of otherworldly type of people, right? Like you don't see people out in the street that look like Tilda Swinton. She's unique.
She really is a chameleon, because she doesn't look as striking as she does in some of her other roles.
Yeah, that's true.
Like trying to think of something with I've seen her in some stuff. She looks just like a bizarre. I can't find her right now,
but I really like Ed Norton's character, because he's a sympathetic type of guy who, again, not just like everybody takes their job seriously, but he genuinely cares about the kids, and he does get a great moment of redemption, because he's like this, he's a punching bag for most of the movie for the other characters. Like you lost your kid, and now you lost the whole troop. Like what the hell? But then he basically saves the guy in a great act of heroism and bravery, and immediately takes charge. Like the guy and the other guy is so traumatized by that he's just holding on to him. So he immediately steps up and takes charge and orders the kids to get the whole bunch of them to safety when the storm is it's worse and the island is flooding and stuff. So it's a nice little moment for him where you see, he can do stuff. And I also like you get a good sense of his character too when at one point one of the kids asks him what he does besides scouting, and he says, "Well, I'm a math teacher. What does it matter?" And he comes back and you know what? My primary job is scoutmaster. I'm a math teacher on the side. Like I am dedicated. I take this seriously. I like that. Oh, man. Jiminy Cricket, he flew the coop. Which he did in a completely unnecessary way. Just, again, an allusion to those old Prison Break movies, right? And even kind of like Shawshank Redemption. It's like, move it, oh, there's a hole in the side. Which is completely unnecessary, but funny.
Yeah, exactly. Also like when they actually find him. And Bill Murray just, they go in the tent and zip it up. He just lifts the whole thing up. It's a great shot. Yeah.
Of all the standout stuff in this movie, like Bill Murray's not part of it, which is too bad. Like he's just sort of, he's there, but he's just sort of ordinary. He doesn't really get to do much. He has that moment where he gets to overreact, but it's not even really what we're used to seeing from a Bill Murray character. We're used to Bill Murray characters being calm and controlled and, what's the word? He's always sort of like a sarcastic guy. Like, and this is different. He doesn't have that sort of detached sense of detachment or coolness or sarcasm. In this, he's just more of a schlub. Like he's a competent lawyer, but he's not clever and quirky the way a Bill Murray character usually is, and he's not he's not cool. Like, usually in these things when Bill Murray, when, the shit's hitting the fan, Bill Murray's rolling his eyes and making jokes. Well, this is not that kind of Bill Murray character, which is not a flaw in the movie. It's just him playing a different sort of character. It just means that, like, when you're talking about the performances in the movie, the Bill Murray one is kind of behind the others, really. And that's no flaw or fault in the movie. It just is what it is.
Yeah, my favorite line of his when he says, "I'm going to go out and try to find a tree to chop down."
Yeah. But I do like the pairing of him and Frances McDormand. You could almost see them as a real couple. Yeah. They do play off each other in a kind of fun way, again, just like as both being really dedicated lawyers. Mm-hmm. There's like where they address each other as counselor, which is pretty funny. I'm like, I object. I don't know.
Uh-huh. Trying to see if I saw any of the other campers or khaki scouts. See if they went on to do anything else that I've seen.
I'm really bad with kids because they change so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible. I mean, the girl herself, the girl that plays Suzy, she seems like so. Um, she seems so charismatic, and she's obviously pretty. And 6 years older, I guess she'd probably be about 18, 19. She seems like the type of person that would definitely be on like the radar to get cast and stuff. But I haven't looked her up.
I mean, I think it's worth to mention that both the leads they weren't actors, beforehand.
Yeah.
They picked them out of schools, so which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I like that approach.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, honestly, like when you look up like a lot of people that were like actors when they were kids, no, you don't necessarily have an affinity for acting when you're that young. It's just more your parents, you were maybe in a position to get into it, right? Like, I don't know, you lived in California and your parents were like, hey, let's audition you here and there and everywhere and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very believable, and not just believable, but it seems practical. The kids that never even thought about acting necessarily, that like when given the chance, it proved that they can do it. Because again, these other kids, there was nothing special about them. It was just more of a time and place thing. I don't know. I always thought that I could have probably been cast on a sitcom when I was a kid if I had lived in the right area. My sister too. We were both bright kids. We could easily remember lines and repeat things back. We were both definitely camera friendly. We had the right sort of look for that. So sometimes it's just about circumstance or opportunity.
Sure.
I mean, look at Daniel Radcliffe. Daniel Radcliffe wasn't an actor. He was just one of the many kids that they look for, trying to find somebody that, at least at that time, really, it wasn't having to do with anything, just physically resembled what Harry Potter would have been, in the first book, like a 10-year-old. And then they went from there. Daniel Radcliffe has gone on to be a very, very good actor. I think he's done some really interesting stuff, not even all of it in movies, like Equus and stuff like that. And that's just a quirk of fate. There's nothing to say he ever would have gone into acting if he hadn't been the right age at the right time for the right opportunity. So it's interesting when you're a kid how much circumstances can shape your path or whatever, your destiny, whether or not maybe you're going to become an actor or something else. And I know we talked before about a lot of these child actors. Some of them didn't really get into it. Like, they were good. They were very good, but then they decided that's not what they wanted to do. I know we talked ad nauseum about the guy that was in a Bill Murray movie. He was in Dave, and he was also in Hook. Remember that kid? We talked about how he went on to like a super special career of like being. Anyway, we did talk about that in one show because for years I was really fascinated by that kid's path because he walked away from acting and became a very impressive academic.
Yeah, I remember you saying
an attorney. I can't remember his name, but anyway, yeah. So that's an example. The kid that was Charlie in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory back in 1971, like that movie was a huge success, and I guess like people were throwing offers at him left, right, and center. They thought this kid's great. We can put him in all these Disney movies and stuff like that. And like he only did the one movie, and he just decided, no, this isn't the life I want. And he became like a vet. Like what he does, or I don't know if he still does it, but yeah, he went into being a vet specifically for like larger animals, like on farms. Like he would go to farms and like help like sick animals there. And like that's what he decided. It was more interesting to him than being in movies. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty toxic environment. That's why you see not a lot of people come out unscathed.
Making that transition is hard for a lot of them. Just because you're a really big child actor doesn't mean you're going to be a really big adult actor. Like some of them, like it only works as a kid. Like, you know, once they become what was cute or memorable or quirky or whatever, like just makes you sort of an awkward adult and not really, there is the rare kid, of course, that had that whole sort of movie star looks going all the way. Like,
Right.
they're like this, even like when they're like 7 or 8, it's like, yeah, they're going to be like a very like striking, attractive person. So if they want to keep going, they can do that. But for a lot of them, yeah, it's not like that.
Sure.
And they love to do that every once in a while, like an MS or something like that. But specifically for some of these actors that weren't really child actors, that were bigger later, they'll show like really attractive people now. It's like, here's what they look like when they were 13. It's like this awful picture of them with terrible hair and braces, and they're like, ah. It's like, I can't believe it.
I mean, being attractive is not all of it, though. I mean,
of course not. No.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I think that derails a lot of like child actors that were decent, or actually had talent, because it was what was acceptable as a kid doesn't translate as adults. Like, oh, sure. We don't want to, we want the more attractive is all I mean. Like, your talent be damned is kind of
right. I mean, like, look at, Haley Joel Osment, kind of an awkward looking adult. I mean, he still does stuff, and, I think he's a, fine actor or whatever, but.
Like I said, some people, I'm so used to them as like a certain age that it was jarring for me. When I saw Gone Girl, like, it was so jarring for me to see Patrick Fugit as like a 30-year-old. Because for me, he's just frozen in like his mid to late teens from like the stuff he did in the movies he's most known for, Almost Famous.
Okay, yeah.
Almost Famous, Wrist Cutter, A Love Story, which is actually like 6 or 7 years later than that, but he still kept that look. In between that, of course, the movie I like a lot, Saved. He was perpetually looking like between 15 and 20. So when I saw him where he's like 30 and he's playing a cop, like not an important role, I'm just like, it's Patrick Fugit. What's going on? Like, it was just sort of not world shattering. That's too strong. You know what I mean? It was just weird. I was like, that can't be Patrick Fugit. Patrick Fugit is forever like 18.
Yeah.
He's like that song, 18 Till I Die. That's Bryan Adams.
I saw a film with Lucas Haas the other day, and that was pretty just earth shattering.
Yeah, I get what you mean though.
He's very very awkward looking dude. Big ears.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, to say like Christian Bale, those are few and far between guys that can they were child actors, successful child actors, and then grow up to be successful as adults as well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he was as a child actor. Really.
I don't think a lot of people even know he was a child actor.
That's what I mean. A lot of people even know, and that's why why I always bring up and point them to movies we did on this show that I like very much, Empire of the Sun, where he basically carries that fucking movie as like a 13-year-old. I mean, there's other good stuff going on, but he's the main character, and it all hinges on him, and he's very, very good. I know there was some stuff about Spielberg maybe not having the normal synergy he had with a lot of child actors, as we talked about. That he really excels, Spielberg, at working with child actors. Apparently, it wasn't quite as smooth with him, but it doesn't matter. He got the performance; it worked out.
Well, I mean, not every kid's the same.
Exactly. And as good as Spielberg is, he's not a miracle worker. He can't always make it perfect. But again, I think it's the movie is remembered basically as like not remembered as being sort of a flop. But I really like it. And as we said, if you haven't seen that, we did a whole show on that. You can check that out.
I think as time goes on, it's probably gonna get more popular with age.
I hope so.
Because it's a great film, and
great film, great performance.
But like E.T., the guy that played Elliot was in Hill House. I don't know if you noticed. He played the dad in the Hill House, Legend of Hill House, or whatever it's called.
Didn't see it.
You watched the first episode?
Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, yeah, I watched like the first 2 episodes. That's right. Okay, so that's him. Yeah, I never.
He's the younger dad.
Right. I never would have known that. I thought he's one of those guys that I thought left.
Right. Yeah, me too.
I thought he left acting. So that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that like the ones that are actually successful like adult actors are few and far between, but the ones that actually like escaped without having some sort of like meltdown or drug problem or whatever.
Lindsay Lohan.
I mean, so many.
Speaking of Lindsay Lohan, not necessarily her. So like about 2 weeks ago, on Twitter, somebody who is a contemporary of Lindsay Lohan was trending on Twitter, and everyone was saying, "Is back." They were
Amanda
talking
Bynes.
Amanda Bynes.
Oh,
What does that
yeah.
mean? She's back. She's not doing anything.
She's
How
not.
can you be back if you're not in something?
She's not smoking crack every day, I guess.
Yeah. I guess she might have done a photo shoot with some magazine, and that means she's back. I'm like, no, she'll be back when she gets cast in like a major movie and does like a good job in it. And I'm not even saying that like she has to do that. That's the other thing. People seem to think that you have to do this or that just because you always did it. You don't have to. Especially if you have a really good body of work behind you. Like I guess I don't have the same drive a lot of those people do, because I feel like, let's say I was a good actor, I could feel like if I got to like this age, 35, let's say I've been acting my whole life, if I felt like I'd done like 10 really strong movies, it would be easy for me to be like, yeah, okay, I don't need to be an actor anymore. Maybe do something else. Like, I don't mean like reinvent the wheel and like embark on something totally insane. I just mean maybe settle into something much more quiet than being an actor. I don't mean, oh, now I've mastered acting, now I'll become a rock star or a astronaut. I don't mean that. I just mean settling into something actually more simple. And people always act baffled when actors do that. I'm just like, I don't know. You don't have to act until you're dead. I mean, a lot of them do, and I respect it, just like a lot of people do this or that till they're dead, and that's fine. But I don't really identify with that.
Maybe like bowing out gracefully until you're like Dean Cain on the Walmart, straight to DVD rack.
Certainly when you're like on a high level consistently, like even as you get older, I mean, I get it to a certain extent. You look at some of these people that have had like super long careers that are old now and they're still doing it. You kind of get it because they've always been at that level. Like somebody like what's his name? He's Canadian. He's old. I can't think of anybody's names anymore. Not Peter O'Toole, the guy who's not Peter O'Toole, because Peter O'Toole is dead. But anyway, I was gonna say him, but anyway,
like take Macaulay Culkin for example. I think he's he kind of stayed in the shadows for a while. He's just been kind of this weird kid in the background, but now he's started doing like, he does a podcast and he has a band and he does some other stuff for certain YouTube videos.
He's more what I can relate to because like he just like had so much success that he had so much money that he could just do what he felt like doing.
Right.
Which is kind of more like, I guess I'm more like that. I guess I'm less about the craft of acting after all, because I'm more like get in and get out. Like get in, make your money, get out and do what you want. Where the difference is a lot of people like acting and it is what they want. And that's great. I mean, I can certainly understand why people enjoy acting. But yeah, I think I relate better to somebody like Macaulay Culkin. Not to mention you can understand how he's faced a certain amount of burnout from that, because like to this day, there is no equivalent to what Macaulay Culkin was in the early 90s. There isn't. We have some child stars, but none of them are what Macaulay Culkin was. He was the child star for roughly a 4 or 5 year period. And yeah, and then he just sort of walked away for a while and had a few like mini comebacks. I already mentioned with Patrick Fugit, he's in Saved, and he's awesome in Saved. He's really, really good in it.
I like Macaulay Culkin in that Party Monster movie a lot.
Yeah, that was like the first comeback movie. He did that and Saved like almost like back to back.
Oh, he was in Saved too? Macaulay Culkin was?
Yeah, he's the wheelchair guy.
That's right. Okay.
And he's really good. I mean, the whole family's good. They just don't appear as much as you expect them to do. Like Kieran is a really good actor.
Yeah, he is.
And then there's an even younger one. His name I can't remember, who's been at least solid.
Culkin.
I absolutely love Kieran. He's like one of my favorite castings ever in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is a movie maybe we'll do sometime just so I can gush about it, because that's a movie that like failed. Like so much money was put into it, but I guess not enough people cared. I'm thinking, I don't know. I love the comic. It's one of my favorite comics, and I think the movie, even though it has to condense the plot extremely, does like an amazing job. And I was super skeptical, by the way, of Michael Cera doing it. And I know most people thought, well, it only makes sense. He's like basically the right age. He's known for being kind of like an indie alternative guy. He is a Canadian. Why wouldn't it be Michael Cera? Honestly, when I read the comics, I was like, no, Michael Cera can't be this proactive. He's not. But I'm not saying he's perfect, but he is pretty good. But some of the other castings are amazing. And Kieran Culkin is one of them. He's like the gay roommate. He's like one of the funniest things in that movie. He's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Michael Cera a lot, but I want to see him transition, into an adult style actor. He's kind of been stuck in that like
Yeah.
young 20s pothead style. I don't know what you want to call that, but
Yeah.
typecast, I guess.
I mean, he's a lot like me in that like he looks younger than he is.
Mm-hmm.
That's difficult. And sometimes, like I said, when they do that, it comes across really weird when they make a movie. Like if somebody's known for being like a younger, like okay, The Woman in Black, which stars Daniel Radcliffe,
Mm-hmm.
is jarring to me because he's basically in that movie maybe one year tops after like the end of the Harry Potter thing.
Right.
So I know by the time Harry Potter was over, he was already in his 20s. He was an adult. He was playing, they couldn't make the movies fast enough for his age to always line up. So by the end, he was older than when he was playing, but he still more or less basically pulled it off. He still looked like he was supposed to be like 18,
Sure.
whatever. But in The Woman in Black, he's like already like a widower with like a 4-year-old son. And the math still works. You can think, okay, yeah, it's like, I don't remember what year it's supposed to be. What is it? It's like the early 20th century anyway. It's like, I don't know, maybe like the 1910s or something. Anyway, it's back then, and it's perfectly believable to think that like a guy who's like 23 or 24 could have had a wife and already has a kid. I mean, it happens. But just because he was Harry Potter, it just seemed weird. It just seemed like, okay, you're just telling me this guy who I'm used to seeing as a kid is like this widower, and he's like, now he's going to work on like the estate because he's like a lawyer. Like, it all seems way too grown up. I mean, it seems too grown up. I'm like, you need to ease him into these grown up roles.
He's trying to get out of that. He's trying to avoid from being typecast, I think.
Yeah, and I understand it, but that one was so fast that to me it was, again, you're overusing the word, but it was jarring because to me it still seemed like he was like a teenager playing a role that was like way older than him. Like they're going out of the way. Like he's an adult. He's an adult. He's a man. Look at his adult role and adult responsibilities. He has a son. He has a job. Like I don't know.
But I mean, Daniel Radcliffe's only 6 years older than you.
Older?
I mean, younger. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
He's in his 40s. No, so that's what I was looking up. I figured he was probably older than I thought he was.
Yeah, he's approaching 30.
I mean, he would have been in his, I don't know what year that Woman in Black movie was, but
isn't it like 2009 or something?
2012.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, he would have been plenty old enough to have kids that old, especially during that period of time. But
sure, but again, just watching the movie, it didn't seem that way.
Right.
I just felt like I was watching like somebody like just they're really going out of their way to say like how much older he is and how he's playing an adult.
But I mean, Elijah Wood. I mean, Elijah Wood could still probably play a 19-year-old. I mean,
I know some of them have that eternally sort of young thing going on.
It's not a bad thing.
No, but it can limit your options. Again, that's why.
Sure.
That's why I mean, there's all sorts of roles out there that Elijah Wood's perfectly capable of playing, but we realize that physically it wouldn't look right.
Right. And
anyway, after this is over, I'll have to look up and see what these kids went on to do, if anything, or if they decide to stay as actors or do other things or what. But I thought they were both very talented and very good in the role, and both seem to have what it takes to, play other roles. So I'll have to look into that. Particularly the girl. Very impressed by the girl.
Yeah, me too. She reminds me a lot of Kristen Stewart.
Kristen
Stewart.
Yeah, I get that. It's almost like this is a bias that has been burrowed into us by like media and stuff like that. But it will sound like a horrible dig at Kristen Stewart, and I don't mean it personally. But because of all that bias that's been put in, she's kind of like a classier Kristen Stewart. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like Kristen Stewart though.
I'm not one of those people that dislikes Kristen Stewart. For instance, like as much as like I have the same sort of healthy amount of hatred for, say, Twilight as everybody else, but I don't put that on Kristen Stewart, and I don't put that on the guy who actually hates it more than I do.
Yeah, get in, man. You got to get in where you can.
They're actors that took a job. None of them thought they were doing great stuff. They were just like, well, it's a job. I'll do it.
Would those two actors be household names if they didn't do Twilight? Who knows?
And exactly right. So. Yeah, it's not like, oh, I can't respect them because they
Right.
were in like a not good movie. Well, no, it's a job. You're a professional, and this can open doors for you
Right.
further on.
I
It
like
absolutely.
Pattinson a lot too. I think he's a great
Yeah,
actor.
he's interesting.
I think she's a great actor too.
I take Andrew Garfield over Pattinson. To me, they're very
Sure.
similar.
Sure. Yeah, they look a little similar.
They're both sort of tall, gangly,
Mm-hmm.
but attractive looking British guys.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Garfield was a weird Spider-Man.
Still haven't seen those, and I'm probably never going to.
They're just not worth it. Like the actual stuff where he's in the suit flipping around looks good, but the movie they built around it are garbage. And speaking of timing and people being like that, hot at that time, like I couldn't fucking stand. I know Orc won't like me saying this, but no, I could not stand seeing Emma Stone in there as Gwen Stacy. It made no sense. I don't dislike Emma Stone. She's just so far removed from what Gwen Stacy is.
She was kind of the it girl for that period of time.
But yeah, exactly. I guess she's still pretty up. I mean, she's hanging in really well.
Yeah, I mean, she was in that
She
show
was
with
kind of
Jonah
like what
Hill.
the world needed after Lindsay Lohan flamed out. You know what I mean? Because she came in doing similar stuff.
Yeah.
Lindsay Lohan had Mean Girls. She had Easy A. She's like, she's that quirky high school girl who narrates to the audience what's going on.
I like both those movies, by the way.
Yeah, I like both those movies too. That's what I mean. They're both just a few years apart from each other. But the difference is the transition has been much better for her than Lohan, probably because she doesn't have all the crazy problems Lohan has.
I haven't gotten a chance to watch that Manic show that she and Jonah Hill are in, where Jonah Hill's like crazy thin.
Yeah, they're on like some experimental drug and they like go through time and stuff. It looks interesting. But I've got like a few shows that are on the back burner for me that I'm trying to figure out how to fit in because, like I said, now that I have Crave combined with my TMN, I have a lot of access. I was looking at something yesterday and I was like, yeah, I should watch like that whole thing. One of them was Arrow because back when Arrow first came on TV, I was really impressed by it, and then I just lost track of it. And it's still going, and it has a huge following, so people still really like it. And I guess it's because Daredevil's over now. I guess I feel like a Jones. I'm like, well, Arrow's kind of the next best thing in that way, I guess. Like,
so Daredevil is no more new seasons, anything? It's just kaput?
I don't know. I thought it was kaput. Then Ryan messaged me the other day, and maybe he knows something, and he says he thinks it's a transition of moving some of the stuff over into Disney's streaming device. But I don't know. Everybody's acting like it's dead, like it's gone, it's over. Like everybody says, like it's done. So if there is a Daredevil on the Disney one, it will be a completely from the ground up new Daredevil. Like, I don't know.
Well, you were saying that Netflix and Disney are basically acting like children over the series, but isn't it primarily just Disney pulling all of their stuff and going over to their own platform? I mean, isn't that going to be the end goal?
I guess so.
Like we're going to have our own streaming service. I mean, they've already announced that. So,
but I mean, this is Netflix canceling it before Disney pulls it.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
So that's kind of why I feel that way, right? Like they're like, we're going to beat you to the punch is kind of what the vibe I'm getting.
I don't blame them. They know what's coming. They see the writing on the wall.
Sure. It's just too bad. I mean, I can't be mad because to me, Daredevil is a miracle. It's actually a miracle. Mm-hmm. I never believed it could be as good as it was ever. There was no way. There was no way to me. If you'd said to me like 4 or 5 years ago or any point in my life, a live action Daredevil show that'll like do the characters justice and be really good, and I'd be like, fuck off. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. I've watched this garbage over and over again. They change this, they change that, they leave this out. But this time they did everything, almost as perfectly as can be. So to me, Daredevil is a little 3-season miracle that I'm just happy happened. And it pulled in some other good shows that were not quite as good, but, pretty good efforts around them. Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones. And they at least got to make the Defenders thing, which was a lot of fun. Defenders is a lot of fun. Like, I don't know. Defenders obviously isn't as cerebral as the rest. It's the whole point is it's novel. They're together. We get to see them fight together. But I just mean, and I don't know. I just never thought I'd see the day where something on the screen would really make me as a comic fan happy. I'm just so impossible to please. But for the most part, Daredevil's the best like live action show I've ever seen. I mean, I'm sorry, The Wire, or whatever else you want to throw it at me.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and I have a certain bias. To me, it's more interesting to see a guy put on a weird costume and go out and beat people up than, a guy make drugs. And I realize that some people might say that speaks to a certain emotional immaturity in me, and that's fine. I don't mind. That's okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, considering it's well done, yeah, sure.
But I mean, that's the happiest thing for me is that they took it all seriously. They weren't like, okay, this is just goofy, zany stuff with a blind guy.
Right.
They were like, no, let's ground this. And again, it's not like they had to come up with thin air. They've been doing that for years in the
Mm-hmm.
comics, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so many great nods to stuff in the comics. And I don't know if those guys get enough like credit, or even, I mean, it kind of sucks to be a comic writer because you don't really make money off this stuff. Like that Daredevil show, like obviously Frank Miller is the most. You wouldn't have anything with Frank Miller because he's the one that came up with the whole, stick Elektra the hand thing. That didn't exist till he came in.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, that's just how impressive it is because, I mean, Daredevil, that's what's funny about Daredevil. I don't want to hijack and go on about Daredevil forever, but Daredevil always had the super badass origin story. It was a great origin story that Stan Lee had come up with what's his name? I'll come around back to it later. He's the son of an Irish Catholic boxer in Hell's Kitchen. He gets blinded trying to save somebody. The radioactive waste goes on his eyes, gives him the weird power. Then his father refuses to throw a fight for some dirty gangster so he could win and show his son that he's going to stand up and win. And then he's murdered for it. And then he goes on to become a hero. Like that's super. That was always in place. And yet the comic it resulted in the 60s and 70s is surprisingly lighthearted. Daredevil was actually not a gritty comic then. It was, and even compared to Spider-Man, it was more kind of silly, lighthearted fun. He would often, the word they always used to describe Daredevil in those days was swashbuckler. So Daredevil was the sightless swashbuckler. And if you read comics from him, he's often making jokes and stuff while he flips around. And everything's really zany. And unlike, say, Spider-Man, he didn't have a strong rogues gallery. In fact, his rogues gallery was a fucking joke back in the day. Leapfrog, Stiltman, stuff like that. So what's really rare is that a writer came in much later and he didn't retcon anything necessarily because he didn't change it. All he did was build some more stuff onto it, and he made it so good and it made it fit so much better. Because the whole thing of he added all that. He added that he didn't just learn to fight by himself. Stick trained him. Stick was part of the chase, which fought the hand. Oh, he went to college with a girl named Elektra. Elektra, year after her father died, got pulled into the hand. It's all really great. But it's really rare when a writer can actually do that. Because usually when writers come in and like retcon a bunch of shit, it's just arrogant. You're annoyed. Although that's basically the story of the early part of what's his name? Alan Moore's career. That was what he was known for. He would take a character, sweep away whatever it was, and be like, okay, I'll take this character, but I'm just going to completely ignore everything that came before and just do it my way. And every time he did it, it was so good, nobody minded. But, But of course, he was doing it with more minor characters too, like a Swamp Thing. Like people weren't like, "Oh no, don't change Swamp Thing." Like and, some people. I'm not saying Swamp Thing was a shit comic in the '70s. It wasn't, but it wasn't like a pillar or anything like
right.
that. It wasn't Batman.
Right.
But anyway, So as sad as I am about the show ending, I'm just happy it existed. I'm happy for what it did, and I have no idea what Disney's going to do. I mean, obviously they're going to make some Marvel shows, but I mean, their animated shows are garbage, so it doesn't make me feel very good. Those animated shows are just they're not good.
I haven't seen any. I've only watched like the Batmans and stuff.
Yeah, but like they had Ultimate Spider-Man for years. It's not good. Right. Like they've made like 6 Spider-Man shows in like the last decade. They won't stop. And he's always, always, always a high school student. We've already heard me complain about this in other shows, but like, let Spider-Man grow up for Christ's sake. Stop making him be a high school student. He was a high school student for about 10 issues in the original run.
Yeah.
That was it. And yet everybody's obsessed with him being a high school student, and also, but having everything current happening to him then. It's just like, oh yeah, Venom, Carnage, all that happened to him while he was still in high school. Like, there's nowhere for him to go. But anyway, I won't blab anymore about superheroes for now. But that all came from, I guess, me talking about Andrew Garfield.
So it's all canceled. All the stuff, the Marvel stuff is gone now.
I haven't heard officially that Jessica Jones or Punisher are over, but it just seems like a matter of time. Because for one thing, Jessica Jones has already had 2 seasons, which is the most anybody got besides Daredevil. It would be too bad to not see a second Punisher season because I was really underwhelmed by the Punisher season. Like Punisher, I really liked in Daredevil season 2, but when he got his own season, it's not bad. I was just not very interested by it. But I always thought, oh, okay, if they do another season, it could be better. And now it seems like there's no chance of that happening. I'll very, very quickly put this in order for people because I know everybody super well cares. Okay, the Daredevil seasons, all three are awesome. Love them. They're at the top. I actually, maybe it's just a bias, but I actually think Iron Fist season 2 is awesome. I love Iron Fist season 2. It's much better than the first, which a lot of people shit on, but I don't have any problem with. I think then Jessica Jones is a character that I hate and super biased about. Her first season is like right there. It's the next best one. It's awesome. Then her second season is terrible. Luke Cage season 1 is boring. Luke Cage season 2 is better, and Punisher is also boring. That's how I see them. So that's kind of the order if people want it. So for me, the best is like, I don't know, Daredevil season 2, and the worst is Jessica Jones season 2.
Yeah, I'm like one episode in on season 2. That's as far as I got.
Jessica Jones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't express. It's not interesting. Like 1 was so good, had the Purple Man so well written, so many interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a boring search for like the shady organization that gave her powers, and she's gonna find out some personal stuff. Like I don't know, it's not good. It's not good. So I can't imagine that getting a 3rd season. I guess they just maybe they have announced it at this point, but at the last I heard, that and Punisher neither had been officially canceled, but Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Cage had all been officially canceled.
Yeah, I heard about those. I haven't heard about. Let's see if the.
And Iron Fist season 2 ends so cool because because it shows they're gonna start using some of the stuff from the run that got me into Iron Fist. Like I started reading Iron Fist kind of randomly when they started making a new series of it in 2006. And Ed Brubaker was the original writer for, and he introduced so many cool concepts and stuff. And they were just starting to touch on some of that in the second part and the ending of season 2 of Iron Fist. It's like, we're not going to see any of that? That made me really sad. Speaking of origins sort of being tampered with, this is weird. So Iron Fist has been a character since the 70s. It wasn't until that series I started to read that the concept of the Iron Fist being like a title that had been passed down through generations, that was the first time it was ever used. Before I even knew that, I just assumed that. But if you read Iron Fist from like the 70s and his sporadic appearance in the 80s, there's nothing that says that it was like a title that other people had before him. So that's the first time they actually talk about it, that, you know, there's been like something like 30 some Iron Fists over the centuries, including even a couple women and stuff like that. And also there's this really great thing that I really like, the idea that the actual last Iron Fist before him was another American with a very similar name, Orson Randall. And Orson Randall is still alive, and it's really interesting stuff. I really like it. It's in the very first arc of the first Iron Fist. That series was called The Immortal Iron Fist, and that's really what made me a fan. I don't even know why I picked it that day. I just randomly picked it. So I don't know. Sometimes you just get lucky. I don't know. I've just always been a big fan of street level heroes, so
Right.
It's no surprise that my upper echelon is like Spider-Man, who is usually a street level hero but can transcend it and do other things. And then you have down in the streets Moon Knight, Daredevil, to a certain extent Iron Fist, stuff like that. So those are all like my like top 5 of like heroes. It's always my favorite stuff.
It seems, according to IMDb, that Jessica Jones and The Punisher both have new seasons coming in 19.
I can't imagine why. I mean, I guess I'll be glad to see them, but I feel like neither previous season justifies them getting this other season. I don't know. Some people I remember talking to Eric. He seemed to think that Punisher was okay. I don't know. I was really underwhelmed. I felt like they almost were going out of their way to make Punisher distance itself from the other ones. And that's what annoyed me, because one of the things that's nice, they all have that sort of nice connectivity through them. They have Claire and stuff to link them. That Punisher season seems to go out of its way to like make it seem like it's completely separate, except for the fact that what's her name is in it. Karen's in it. Karen Page.
Is that Rosario Dawson's character?
No, that's the blonde that would work there. Rosario Dawson's character was the Link early on. She was the Link in every single show. It's really weird that she doesn't appear in... But she doesn't appear in Iron Fist Season 2. I think that's the only thing she doesn't appear in. She's in every other thing. But yeah, she was the common Link. And they started which was cool. They started doing it very slowly. And again, she's a combination of two separate characters in the comic. She's a combination of Night Nurse and a character with that name, Claire Temple. They combined them into her, which was pretty clever, I thought, actually. But yeah, she was the link. I mean, I can't tell you how happy I was at the end of like, what season was it? I can't even remember. It was like maybe Daredevil season 2 or something. At the end of it, I think it's the end of Daredevil season 2, wherein a big plot point is a whole bunch of hand ninjas attack the hospital while she's there and kill a bunch of her co-workers. So like towards the end, she's feeling a little annoyed that I guess she can't like defend herself. So at the end of like in one of the last shots of Daredevil season 2 in the last episode, she finds one of Colleen Wing's like advertisements on like a telephone pole advertising like her karate school, and she takes it. And I'm like, oh, Iron Fist! Like I don't know, it works for people like me, you know.
Yeah.
Even when they throw me the tiniest of bones, it makes me happy. Like, I don't want to give too much away for anybody that wants to see Iron Fist season 2. But there's a character, I'll just say, and as soon as I heard her name, I was like, I know what they're going to do. Now, she doesn't have the same powers or anything. In fact, she doesn't have powers, but as soon as I heard her name, I knew what she was going to do. But anyway, there's a scene later where she's like singing Monday, Monday, and that makes me super happy because that actually happens in a Daredevil comic where she sings Monday, Monday, written by Brian Michael Bendis. That's from the Marvel Knights run. So they really did pay attention and even put in small things from the comics that makes me happy.
Yeah, that's the tough thing about trying to appeal to the actual fans and the mainstream audience.
Well, to me, this proves that it can be done, right? Because it made a really smart show that a lot of people that never picked up a comic book liked, and it pleased like a crazy person like myself. I realize it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying they showed it can be done, and it gives me hope. But yeah, to me, Daredevil was like an impossible dream. So the fact that it actually happened for 3 seasons, 3 excellent seasons, I'm sad to see it go, but I'm just happy that it existed in the first place.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It seems like we all kind of saw that coming, though.
It's another reason why I shit all over the world of TV, even in Netflix. Because I say Netflix solved a lot of TV problems because you didn't necessarily have to, and so did HBO to a certain extent, because you didn't have to worry about necessarily a content like, you didn't have to make it all PG, and you didn't have to worry about commercial breaks, and you didn't necessarily every episode doesn't have to have the same runtime. So it fixed a lot of the problems, but there's still one major problem for TV that can't be solved by Netflix or anything else, and that's a series can get canceled at any time. And that's just always going to exist.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I've watched quite a bit of TV over my life, but not nearly like somebody like you. And I've never been able to commit to TV the way you have because those limitations piss me off to no end.
Yeah. I've gotten spoiled by things like Netflix that drop an entire season at one time.
I never minded waiting. I never thought that was a problem. As we said, sometimes waiting was better in our day, right? It was nice.
Sure, it's not necessarily the waiting; it's that you forget about it. Like
that is true. Actually, that is something that's probably one of the main reasons why all sorts of shows I started to watch that I actually thought were good and had no problems with, I still stopped watching because maybe something else came up and I would get distracted.
Right. I mean, if you're not butts in seat at that time slot.
Yeah, that's very true.
I was watching the X-Files at like 11 o'clock on Sunday night is what it was eventually, because I was always at work during the time it came on. I would always set my VCR to SLP. And
I was never an X-Files fan like you and Ryan, but like I would at least watch an episode here and there. I'd watch Simpsons, King of the Hill, then maybe some of X-Files, maybe all of it if I liked it a lot.
Yeah, Fox had a good run back then. Usually the show
that was Sunday night on Fox. Yeah.
Right. They would pair it up with, they would do the animation thing for like an hour, and then it'd be like X-Files and then something else, or as I know, Millennium was on there for a little while with X-Files.
Don't even know what that one is.
Chris Carter.
Was that short run?
I think it did 3 seasons.
Longer than I thought. I've probably heard of it. I can't think.
Lance Henriksen. It was kind of what Chris Carter wanted to transition into, but they didn't really let him because he wanted to do one movie and be done.
Now, did I hear this wrong, or is Chris Carter basically like the TV version of George Lucas in that he created something people love and then everybody turned on him and hates him? Is that true?
I mean, yeah, people do hate him. I don't hate him, but he's made some decisions I don't agree with.
Yeah.
Like, I thought the newest season was pretty good, but everyone seems to shit all over it. But there will be no more.
That's really for the best at this point.
Probably so.
I mean, there are good seasons. They're always going to be there.
Chris Carter, his problem was always finishing something. Like,
That's my problem. Yeah.
Putting a stamp on it. Like, it's either, too open ended, or he's always had a problem. Like, he ended the first, comeback season with a huge cliffhanger that he never really even addressed very well when it came back in season 2, or season 2 of the comeback season, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Season 11, whatever that wound up being. But yeah, it's unfortunate. That's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, that's Ryan's favorite show.
And I would say it's my favorite, but there's so many flaws. Like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got a lot of problems.
I mean, it had a long run. The quality's going to dip here and there.
But if you look up until when that first movie came out, Fight the Future, like, that was the plan. Chris Carter wanted to end right there and then make one more movie and be done.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't let him do it, so you saw the quality dip right there. It dipped, and then he did Millennium, and then you saw the quality continue to dip until Scully and Mulder left the show altogether.
Well, yeah.
And then it was just absolute garbage, and nobody watched it.
It happens with too many shows. Where you get to the point where everything that made it good is gone, and like it's just sort of the hollow shell of the show is hanging on with like new. It's like, yeah, your main characters are gone. The person that created it is no longer involved. It's like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't know, I know we talked about this before, but I really liked The Office. But towards the end,
yeah,
when they got rid of like arguably the most popular character, because I was like, this allows the other characters to shine. So,
I agree with you.
Because like the first like 4. I mean, I didn't see all of it, but I watched most of, say, like the first 4 seasons, and I thought, hit and miss, good and bad, but I couldn't like it the same way a lot of people did. But then like the last 2 seasons, I think are super awesome. I really like them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like they could have easily done one more season with that supporting cast. I mean, it's such a great ensemble. Is hard to come by. And I feel like everybody was just wanting to do other projects. Everyone had kind of outgrown the show.
Sure. That happens.
So, yeah. That's unfortunate, but that was probably for the best also, considering they did that awful farm. Did you see that? The Dwight spinoff show?
No, I didn't know that existed.
It's in The Office, but it was the pilot for the new show.
They're gonna make one about the Schroot's family.
Yeah, it's maybe in the last season.
Rainn Wilson's an interesting guy. He's done some interesting things.
Yeah, just watch it and see what you think.
I'm having a lot of trouble with him as the voice of Lex Luthor.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the Doomsday movie that's coming out. Like, you remember they did a shitty Doomsday in 2007, but this is supposed to be like a good Doomsday that's like closer to the comic. He's Lex Luthor in that.
Yeah.
And I think Rebecca Romijn is Lois Lane. Not bad.
English is not even her first language, so I don't know how I feel about that.
For the most part, the DC animated movies are really good, really strong quality. The only problem is sometimes they use the same voice actors and sometimes they don't. And that kind of annoys me.
I would say that's one thing DC actually has gotten right.
Yeah, absolutely. Recently. It's funny. Marvel makes the good live action movies and DC makes the good animated movies. And yet, no, I don't think DC's live action movies are as bad as Marvel's animated. Why are Marvel's animated movies so poor? But they are, man. I can't name one good one.
I haven't really seen enough.
Like, the best I can name isn't really a full movie. It's 2 vignettes, and that's Hulk Versus, which is just basically 2 vignettes. Hulk fighting Thor, and then Hulk fighting Wolverine. It's pretty good, but it's not a movie. It's just 2 things put together. It doesn't really follow a plot. It's more or less just watching them fight. You know, that's like the best thing I can think of in the Marvel animated canon as far as movies go, and it's not even a proper movie. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But speaking of which, yeah, so the first, and what's really weird is the first like Marvel movie that's animated is getting a theatrical release is Into the Spider-Verse, and I don't know, it looks like they're leaning hard on the Goofy for that, so I don't care. I actually own the whole original Spider-Verse crossover in a massive hardcover that I paid a lot for, and I like it, but this is not that. This is, you know, that's actually super serious. It has the Inheritors like murdering people left and right. That is not happening in this. This is just another excuse to shove Miles Morales in our faces. And I just won't talk about that because it'll come off wrong. People think I'm a racist or something. I'm not going to do that. But I really don't. I really resent how Marvel has thrust Miles Morales at our faces over the last since he's appeared. I've really resented it.
Wasn't that a lot of the when they did the reboot, Spider-Man reboot? A lot of the backlash.
Well, yeah, what happened was, okay, so you have the Ultimate Universe, which doesn't exist anymore, and the whole idea was Ultimate is a separate continuity. You can do what you want in it, sure. Make things different. That's like, say, where the Black Nick Fury's from, which is fine. And they do things differently. But anyway, in Ultimate Marvel, they eventually killed off Peter Parker. For real. They killed him, and then they replaced him with Miles Morales. That is annoying enough. But at least it's the Ultimate Universe. But then, eventually, the Ultimate Universe did end. But it doesn't matter. Miles Morales survived it. Now he's over. So now there are two Spider-Man swinging around. There's the real, actual Marvel Universe 616 Peter Parker, and there is Miles Morales. And everyone's like, "Yep, two Spider-Man. That's cool. Yep." Not cool. Not cool at all. As I said, I'm all for creating new characters and having diversity and all that. I just don't want to see them usurp established characters. I don't mind Miles Morales if he could be somebody else. Just why does he have to be Spider-Man? But anyway, that's all I'll say because I don't want to come off wrong there. But spinning back to Moonrise Kingdom, we've mostly done the points on it. It's a fairly tight movie. It's about 90 minutes. Not a lot we can say too in depth about the cinematography, except it's more of what we come to expect from Wes Anderson, and that it has great cinematography. Mm-hmm. I love not just like the colors and stuff like that, but there's a lot of great tight like steady shots. There's lots of good steady shots that I really like. Just establishing shots of things. It's just a beautiful movie to watch. Even if you're not like paying attention to what's going on in the story, if you're just like watching like that and listening to the music, it says here, and I understand that too. There's sort of like an emphasis is put on the concept of symmetry, which you can really tell again, but just by the way things are really centered in the shots, or the way things are framed, or how like a character looks in the shot, like how much space is above their head and stuff, like that is all lined up perfectly. Like there was a lot of care put into that, and again, it works out really well. And it just does a great job of further showing off this really great world that's been showed. You know, it's interesting. Like there's a lot of busy detail going on in the shots, and yet there's a wonderful simplicity to them, in that they don't feel busy. And that's not an easy thing to pull off. That takes probably a lot of experience and practice as a filmmaker to do, and I'm sure help from, say, a cinematographer, editor, etc. And it's this movie is a fantastic example of it. He's really great also at like framing something and not necessarily doing anything obvious, but getting you to focus on the right thing anyway. Like somehow figure out visually where your eye is going to go. Like I don't even know how exactly that's accomplished, but I mean, other filmmakers can do it too. But they set the shot; it has several things in it, but they get the audience looking at the right thing, which is really something. I don't mean in an obvious thing like when a character's talking. When a character's talking, you're looking at them. I mean when like that's not happening and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like he's almost a cinematographer himself, or I don't know if his cinematographer is should get all the credit for his films, but it's really amazing what they're able to accomplish. But he, between the use of color and the framing and everything, I really love how it comes out.
Yeah, a few good tracking shots too, like when they meet Ben. and stuff. Some very nice tracking shots moving through, which are, again, very difficult things to pull off properly, especially when you have a lot of moving parts, like a lot of characters and a lot of stuff. So some complex stuff going on here, just pulled off so well. So that's another reason why I always have to gush about Anderson. You know, there's the obvious things, like I like his world and the quirky stories and characters he has, but then the presentation is just so bang on. That, yeah.
It's really, I mean, I got to say, I was not like originally a fan of a lot of his films. It wasn't until, you know, I've done this with a lot of, you know, directors and styles of film, that I didn't really get it. It didn't click with me until I watched it a few times. But it was like I saw Bottle Rocket early on, didn't really care for it. Saw Rushmore early on, didn't really care for it. And that's still like one of my least favorite Wes Anderson films, even though
What's funny
I
is
like
a lot of people I talk to bring up Rushmore right away. They really like it. I've always thought it's fine, but it's not one. It doesn't grab me either. It doesn't grab me the same way. I'm just like, yeah, Rushmore's sort of an amusing movie to me. Like, you know, it has a certain the comedic element to it is amusing to me, but it doesn't have that world that pulls me in, like many of his later movies do.
It's probably his more well-known film, I would say. That's probably what he's primarily known for.
I wouldn't have thought so, but as I said, when I talk to a lot of people, they bring that up all the time. Just, you know, random people. Oh yeah, Rushmore. That's a cool movie. I'm like, Rushmore? Sure, I guess.
And even with like Royal Tenenbaums, like I didn't really like it the first time I saw it either. But that's one that has really grown on me. And
that's probably when I decided I was a fan.
Was
I didn't see it even when it came out. I saw it I probably saw it maybe only a few months even before Life Aquatic came out, you know, so
because it is kind of a
transition into becoming a fan. In that, like, Life Aquatic looked, I mean, I love Life Aquatic, but I mean, it just looked interesting to me at the time. I was like, oh yeah, I like that. And then I came out of it, and then like that was how I was sold as a Wes Anderson fan.
I mean, the pacing is off, and it's really a jarring film all the way around. So that may be what was throwing me off, but really, you know, once it finally clicked with me, I really came to love that film. That's probably my favorite of his, I would say, is Royal Tenenbaums. You know, if I had to pick, but
yeah, and it's a possibility that we might do it going on. You know, there's a good possibility we do 2 or 3 more of his because we're fans, and it's not like it would be repeating. They all stand out from each other, and it is kind of interesting to compare some of them to each other because some of them, you know, they share various stylistic elements, but in other ways they're very different from each other thematically or story-wise and stuff like that. Or even just sort of the kind of characters when you have actors playing different roles and stuff like that. I hate adding that. I need to stop saying and stuff like that, man. It's terrible. It's a fair of a little verbal tick that I do.
Yeah, I say like too much.
Well, you know is the bane of my existence. I fill in space by saying you know. You'd think after all these shows and speaking, I would have been able to get it better under control.
You need to switch it to like, you know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying? It's all super fast. You know what I'm saying? Yes, I do know what you're saying. It makes me think of sometimes, you know, I just randomly quote stuff. One of the things I like to randomly quote is, here's a great show that got canceled after 1 season with a cliffhanger ending. Clone High. I'm sure you saw Clone High. Holy fuck, go watch it. It's an animated film. It's an animated show, and it's about teenage clones of historical figures. Oh my god! Really cool. Oh my god! You have to watch it. It's like 12 episodes, but okay, so I won't ruin it then. And unfortunately, but I will ruin it by saying it has a cliffhanger ending, and it only ran for one thing. It's from the early 2000s. It has some interesting people on the cast. Most notably, it had Will Forte as the more or less main character, a teenage Abe Lincoln. So the main characters are like Abe Lincoln, JFK, Joan of Arc, Gandhi, who's not at all like the normal Gandhi, and then various other people sprinkled in and stuff. A few celebrity cameos, like Marilyn Manson's in there. Mandy Moore does an episode. You know, oh, you have to watch Clone High. It's so funny. I promise you. I promise you'll like it. But anyway, I was going to say there's a certain quote from that I say all the time, but I won't say it, I guess. But yeah, you have to go absorb that show. It's maybe 11 or 12 episodes. Just, you know, a little 20.
Odd show.
I know, but it's really good. I promise you.
Sure, yeah. I'm always looking for new stuff to watch.
Yeah. No, just a really, offbeat sort of style of humor.
Sure.
But a bit more adult too. Like it'll make like some risque stuff that's like say more risque than say The Simpsons. Like it's not necessarily it's not South Park territory or anything like that. So it falls in a weird place because most of it is like offbeat, just weirdness that like you could show a little kid. But then every once in a while, there's stuff that's like obviously no little kid should see. So
Right.
it's a very weird mix actually, but it's really cool. Yeah, yeah, I can't recommend that movie. That's one of those shows that just kills fans that it only got one season. Like it's unbelievable, and it had again a really great, just awesome cliffhanger ending that we'll never get to see the resolution of because this was ages ago. This is like 2002 or something. This was forever ago. Yeah, Clone High.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like Abe is just sort of your everyman character. He's super like enthusiastic. Oh yeah, Cleopatra is like the rich bitch who's like full of herself. Joan is sort of like the introverted goth girl who's in love with Abe. Um, JFK is just like a total like jock, popular guy, and Gandhi, in rejection of his DNA, has just become like a easygoing sort of like party animal guy. He's like, "What's up, guys?" kind of guy. And those are the main characters. They'll randomly throw in other various famous people. You'll see people like George Washington Carver. Who else is in there? Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison is in one episode voiced by Andy Dick. Yeah, a whole bunch of others. The whole point, it's weird. It's a whole high school full of teenage versions of, like, the setup is ridiculous. It makes almost no sense. But that's what's great about it.
What was the other show you were telling me about? The British like scientist or I was trying to think of the name the other day when I was trying to find something to watch. It's got shit.
Was it a comedy?
Comedy, yeah. Live action, probably from like 2000s, like
It
early
wasn't
2000s.
Garth Marenghi, was it?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that is crazy good. It's only 6 episodes, but oh
Yeah.
my god. Yeah. So that's like it's a fake show. It's like a show about a fake show from the 80s. Garth Marenghi is like this obvious, like really pompous takeoff of like Stephen King. He's like this horror writer in the 80s, and he had this show that never got aired because it was terrible. But now that they're saying, oh, now we get to air it, so you get to. It's almost sort of like a DVD commentary because sometimes he and one of the actors will talk about from back then. Oh, yeah, that's you can even see that on YouTube. That's easy to find.
Is it on YouTube? Yeah. Okay.
Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. You're about to enter my dark place. Oh, it's hilarious. Just about this weird paranormal haunted hospital. He's Dr. Rick Douglas, MD. And it's just like every horrible 80s cliche you can ever imagine with awful acting, awful effects and budget. It's great. You'll love it. I can't imagine. It's another one I can't imagine you not liking.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I like a lot of those guys that are involved with it.
Oh yeah, this is like the best thing they've done.
Yeah.
I think it's again like I could live if it had only been one season, but only 6 episodes. Come on, man, at least 12 or something. But yeah, it's so funny. She was like a candle in the wind, unreliable. So many great lines. Yeah, you're in for a good time watching those. I promise.
I'm gonna tell you, there's one British show I've been watching a lot on HBO. It just started. What's the name of it here? Oh, fuck. For you, Sally Forever. Have you heard of that at all?
I'm not sure. I don't think I know the title.
It's got a. Let's see. Julia Davis is in it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen her.
Yeah, you would definitely know her if you saw her, but it's just a hilarious show.
Well, if it's on HBO, I can watch it because I've got that now.
I know you're a big fan of like British comedies and stuff.
Yeah, there's quite a few really good ones. She
was in Love Actually.
We might have talked about this before, but a show that's surprisingly good that I haven't gotten all the way through, but I've watched I think there's 4 or 5 seasons of it. It had a weird break. I think we talked about it before. But that I watched when I first got this is before I had Crave. This is when I was at my parents' house and they had Crave, and that's Episodes.
Oh yeah,
Episodes is good.
the Matt LeBlanc show.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
he plays like a super jerk ass version of himself.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I put that on not really expecting anything. I just kind of randomly put it on, and I was really I'm kind of hard to impress, and I was like, this is actually really good. So I'll have to watch the later seasons. I watched the first two.
I think they only made like maybe three, possibly 4.
Yeah, there was like a year or two break between
at least. Yeah, it's like 2 years in between each season. That's like you think it's canceled and it comes back. It's stuff like that I'm talking about. Like you don't realize it's out there. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really funny show because you got these Brits that are coming over. They've done all this like high class stuff, and they come and they got to dumb down for American audience, and get fucking Matt LeBlanc in their show, and he just is an idiot the entire time, which is pretty funny that he's able to be that.
It's also one of those shows where like everybody in the cast winds up sleeping with each other at some point, and yet they do it in such a way that it actually kind of works. Like Matt LeBlanc, like fucks everybody.
He fucks everything, yeah. He even almost fucks the dude a couple of times. Yeah,
there's so much like sexual tension between him and the dude. It's pretty funny. But yeah, that show impressed me because I heard about it years ago when it started, and I just sort of disregarded it as I disregard most things. But I had an opportunity to watch it. I was like,
you're like Matt LeBlanc's in it, so I'm definitely not going to watch that.
I give Matt LeBlanc a lot of credit for like a surprising amount of self-awareness.
Yeah, I mean, being able to laugh at yourself, I think, is something that a lot of people in Hollywood aren't able to do.
Although, keep in mind, I'm sure he had some concessions, like the fact that he's like, okay, I'm playing a jerk-ass version of myself, but everyone's going to talk about how big my dick is, right? Like, that's a big part of it. You have to say that, Matt LeBlanc definitely has a big dick. Yep, for sure. That's a fact. That is a fact. That's not something we're kidding about. You know?
Constantly has sex with, like, really attractive women.
Yeah.
So I'm an idiot. Who cares?
That's like the actor's mantra. That's what it is if you're an actor.
But
so who cares, you know?
He goes on.
I'm rich and I'm hot and I have lots of sex and
I mean, he goes on and he like loses all his money, like he's completely broke. And
I didn't get that far. That's cool.
It's pretty funny. He has to sell like one of his 8 beach houses. Like that.
Oh, the tragedy.
Yeah. But I would say that's good all the way through the last season. I think it's over with.
Yeah, that's good to know. Because I'll have to start watching the 3rd season sometime soon. Maybe in some of the 2nd to remember how things ended up. Yeah, like we said, this movie also has a Criterion edition that was released in September 2015. As I think all Wes Anderson's films have Criterion releases. I painted myself into a corner when we were picking this one, so I didn't have time to watch the extras on this, but I want to watch some of the extras, including just the one, Welcome to the Island of New Penzance, because that'd be cool just talking about how they made like a fictional island stuff. It's cool. That's another thing I forgot to mention, is just like, I've always liked stories that are about like islands, because I like places in real life that are like isolated and different. I'm from an island, but it's not really that isolated and different. But so like that, like if I had to like give you a list of like 10 places in the world I want to visit, like half of them are like islands, because I want to go to a place that's different. One that's not too far, not even that far from where I live, technically. So like a flight would go is Saint Pierre et Miquelon. Saint Pierre et Miquelon is basically somewhere south. It's like between here and Newfoundland, but it's technically part of France. So I've always wanted to go to Saint Pierre et Miquelon, and there's other places too, of course. But that's the one that jumps to mind. I'm sure I've talked about my obsession with this. Is actually part of Nova Scotia, Sable Island. I'm obsessed with Sable Island.
Oh, really?
Which is which is part of Nova Scotia. It's off the southern coast of here, a few hundred miles out, and it's a very small sandbar island. In fact, maybe someday it'll disappear, which is too bad. It's very small. It doesn't have a town or anything like that. The only population are people that are like working there as like maintaining the lighthouse and like a few scientists, and that rotates throughout the years, or throughout the months or whatever. So it's not a community and stuff like that. What's really funny is so like about a year ago, we had some municipal election around here. I barely ever remember to vote in those. So I was voting in this one. So I go down to actually a place I used to go all the time when my life was different. The Sub, the Student Union building of Dalhousie. So on the second floor of that, that's where the people in my district are voting. And what's funny is I'm in the same district as Sable Island. Sable Island is included in my district,
Wow, that's cool.
which I think is hilarious. I'm like, because it's just this island that doesn't. It's not even a community. It's just this place. But anyway, the other big thing about Sable Island that makes it special and amazing. Well, there's two things. One, and one is a consequence of the other. One is it's part of that section that's called the Graveyard of the Atlantic. It's a place with dozens, if not hundreds, of shipwrecks, just all over the place. And the consequences, one time there's a shipwreck sometime in the 1700s of some, I think, Spanish ship, and it was carrying a bunch of horses. And to this day, Sable Island has a population of wild horses. They're government protected, and they're beautiful and amazing. And I don't know. I've always thought if I could ever just get my foot in the door and establish, publish something, I'm a writer, yay, I'm gonna step up. I would be able to call up the government and ask them permission for me to go there, because I just bullshit my way. I'd be like, I'm gonna write a book about, something about Sable Island, because you need government. You can't just go to Sable Island. You need permission from the government.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a protected place.
Is it like a wildlife type, like a refuge type thing?
Well, because of the horses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no one's allowed to interfere with the horses. And they're pretty much the only thing on Sable Island. Sable Island doesn't even really have trees. It might have 4 trees. It's just basically a sandbar with grassland and horses. But obviously enough fresh water for them to live somehow. Don't ask me how. It's also one of the foggiest places in the world.
Really?
Out of every year, 250 days are fog. Or something like that. I often talk about Halifax being super foggy. It is, but Sable Island is even foggier.
Wonder why they would want to protect the non-native species.
Well, because they're an interesting anomaly, I guess, right?
Okay.
The whole thing was they were horses that were, from Europe, and they were domesticated, but because of what happened, they became wild, which is kind of cool. I don't know, it's a cool thing. I think it's nice that they're protected. Seals go on the island, too, I guess.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'm sure it has some natural wildlife.
Yeah, but not very much, though. It's a very small island. But yeah, that's what makes it special. The horses are what make it special. That they're the descendants of horses from a shipwreck many years ago. But yeah, so maybe someday I'll get out there. That's an extreme example, though, because that's not even a community where people really live. But yeah, I've just always had a thing for islands. The idea of something being isolated and different from the rest of the world. I think that's another thing that really appeals to me about not modern day Japan, but the feudal Japan. Because it was especially for somebody like me that played so many RPGs and video games, Japan in say the 1400s is the closest thing in real life to an RPG type thing. In that you've got this, island nation that is more or less cut off from the rest of the world, and everything just works, there without interference from the rest of the world. And at that time, of course, you have, the emperor and various shogunates and warring factions and all that interesting stuff. Little villages and roaming, samurai and roaming ronin and ninja clans. I mean, it all sounds like a crazy fantasy, but it was real. So that interests me too. And one of the reasons that made it special was because, it was its own island. It wasn't part of anything else. And Japan stayed closed off to the world for quite a while. The first Europeans to come in contact with Japan were the Dutch. They really got around for a small country. Anyway, I guess we can wrap up here on Moonrise Kingdom and such. But yeah, I don't think we're going to go right into another Wes Anderson right away, although it would kind of fit our current theme of doing maybe lighter stuff. Just recently, it's a bit of an oddity, because you would say both this and Amelie are basically what you might call pleasant movies, and we don't often do pleasant movies, so we might try to stick on that, throughout maybe the Christmas season, December, just to shake things up, do some lighter stuff. But as far as other Wes Andersons, I think there's other Wes Andersons in our future, but we will spread them out a bit more just to keep things interesting. So whatever we come at you with for the next couple of weeks will be something different. But if you are interested in other Wes Anderson films, that is in the future at some point. So, and hell, since this is one, let us down below what you think of him as a filmmaker, and if you have a favorite of his, Flash if you want to see us do that or something, because we're very mindful of that. And we're very interested in your opinions on that too. So yeah, if you want to leave a message or something, we'd be very interested.
Sure.
So I believe that's it for tonight. So thank you very much for being with us. And I won't drop the ball this time. We'll make a decision a little sooner. Last night I was sort of hemming and hawing between a couple of which ones before I decided. I did announce the show, but I did it for only an hour or so beforehand, so that's not very good. So we'll try to figure out something by the weekend. Is usually what our main goal is, by the weekend. So we'll be in discussion about that over the next few days. So until then, we will see you next time as December marches on towards the day of Christmas.
Awesome.
All right, that's great. Thanks a lot. That is Jay. I'm Cole. We thank you very much, and we will see you next time. Peace out. Bye.
Bye.